Up.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks, Jamie, for making this possible. Hello from Germany. It's a little bit late here, so don't. Sorry if we're like not fresh coffee morning people right now, but a little bit late already. But I guess you are, or most of you. As Jamie mentioned, we would even like to, the things that we brought that we wanted to tell you and that we might have shown on the website or in beta programs also earlier, but we somehow got like interrupted, as we all, from that situation that we were in. And so we would like to take the chance to show you a few things that are not like on the website or known otherwise, that we are preparing, and that which are also quite close. So I think it might be interesting to show, but what's, and we would like put them into the 4 areas that Jamie mentioned also, and show a few things each when they fit in. With me is, I don't know if it's everybody on that side, is Vanya. Vanya joined the Livegrade team just a few months ago, and will take care more and more about the product management for Livegrade and related products and the hardware integrations and all these things. Maybe before we start, maybe a few sentences, because this was a good thought that Jamie gave us. So when we started Livegrade as a product, it really started as a remote control for a LUT box. Some of you might remember the HD links that went up in flames one or the other times. So it was really just 4 color wheels that controlled an HD link little LUT box, and it grew to a, hopefully, or that's what I hear, to a thing that's very useful in a variety of topics for camera department work, let's say. And also the DIT's role grew over the last 10 years from like the most technical person on set that is the only one that brought a computer, to really a hub of information responsible for data management, for handing over all the results that are created on film set in a proper manner to the next production step. So this thing evolved. I think we evolved together a little bit, and we just found that from the last video, from the last session, that Livegrade sometimes seems to be a little bit too open and leaves like a lot of questions how to actually implement or use it in different projects. And I think the time has come when, so we always thought it should be a very flexible and very powerful tool that should solve a lot of different like technical setups and different production styles or hardware integrations. And I think it still is, but with the flexibility and the openness of it also came that question, but what is the best practice, how to use it? And I would be very happy to learn from you in the discussion today also what you think, what is too open, so where you would feel a good starting point, like as a guideline or as a template or as an example, would help to get started better, or where things are like have loose ends that might not be obvious how to use them in every situation. So that's why I brought pen and paper to note things. And as Jamie is going to be a YouTuber now, I guess this thing can be rewatched again later. So you're very welcome to throw your opinion at us. It will stick, I can promise. So how do we start, Jamie?
Is there anything you'd like to show us, to get started, like in Livegrade?
Just let me think.
And you can share your screen.
So I would like to go. Let's dive into your first section, maybe into the artistic intent, because we have a few topics on the grading that might be interesting. So we have been very actively defending the color wheels as the only thing to change the color of the image for quite a while now, and always said, ooh, who needs secondaries and who needs like more than the CDL? But we see that the time has come when this doesn't hold for a lot of productions anymore. The original intent was to keep things simple and compatible with the ASC CDL, but we found that that we need to open up here a little bit. So we did a lot of work already here. Some is motivated by HDR. Maybe I mention HDR first.
Sure.
We have an Apple XDR display since the beginning in our office, and modified Livegrade already so that it can show PQ images in Livegrade. For example, when you're in ACES mode, or choose a PQ LUT, so you can switch the viewer to PQ output and have an HDR image on the computer screen part of Livegrade, but you could have used LUT boxes to do that already. So maybe we can talk about this a little bit. So there's a good prototype right now running that shows us how to use the XDR display. And what we could show right now is maybe the curves, because we worked a little bit on the curves, and maybe Vanya can share his screen and just show a little bit just how we thought that the curves could help you guys.
Awesome. And just before Vanya gets started, just to remind everyone, we're kind of going in order here. It's not in super important order, but we're focusing on show technical and artistic intent, which includes CDLs, CFEs, 3D LUTs, reference images. We want to start here because if everyone understands that there's an artistic side and a technical side to Livegrade, then we're all on the same page. And then it doesn't matter how you want to work within the program. At some point, you have to create a file that shows the artistic and technical intent of the DP. So that's what we're kind of focusing on right now. And Vanya, feel free to share your screen.
Yeah. Can you see my Livegrade now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let me show the new curve editor. So until now, I don't know if you already know the current curve editor. Some of you will know. So actually, what you have now is just the normal master curve. That's what you can do at the moment. And this, of course, produces sometimes oversaturated images like here. So we introduced another mode, which is called Luma and Rgb. So we have master and RGB now. So master, red, green, and blue, like you know from other color grading applications also. And then you can switch to Luma and RGB, and now the saturation is reduced because this curve doesn't affect the master levels, it only affects the Luma levels. And yeah, and then yeah, like I said, you can grade or create a curve adjustment for each individual color channel, red, green, and blue. And then we also have this custom color curve, where you can pick your custom color and create cool effects like, for example, an orange and teal look. And as you can see, this works very fast because you can really pick the color you need, and then you can also fine tune it down here. Yeah, and then of course you can reset the curves individually or all of them. Yeah, and I think that's a big step forward. Yeah, that's the new curves, and in addition to that, we also work currently on hue, Luma, saturation versus curves. Also similar to other applications, and you know that we already have an HHS node, but yeah, you will also have the opportunity to change Luma versus saturation, saturation versus saturation, etc. that's my little quick curve demonstration.
There's a question if the curves changes are applied to CDL. Do you guys have a way to map that into a CDL compliant thing, value?
No, you can only get that through a LUT. We will implement an opportunity where you can export CDL and LUT together. So you will have your CDL values, and all the other nodes that are not in the CDL values will be baked in a LUT.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's a topic that we found when we now like allow for a certain commercial shoots, for example, when you really need to pick certain colors and desaturate them or nudge them into a certain direction of hue. It becomes part of the grade, and how do you export that? That's exactly the question. And if you're in a LUT and CDL workflow, the only way is then to hand over a CDL that might carry the main look somehow, but these finer adjustments then need to be part of the show LUT then. And so if you keep the order of operations right, what we can do is then combine all the CDL parts into one CDL file, and all the rest of the nodes, including the log to video LUT, then in one 3D LUT with the same name, for example. And so that would be a package then of the CDL and the LUT that could carry then all these curvy things, because they simply cannot be transferred into CDLs, unfortunately.
Cool. Is now a good time to talk about how CFE would fit into this? Because that would be, you know, something good to cover if you're ready to cover that.
Yeah, let me just share the screen here. So what Jamie mentioned is that we worked with Colorfront for quite a while. And so what they have is they came up with a pipeline that is kind of similar to the ACES pipeline. It consists of an input transform, then a lot of stuff, and then an output transform. So it's a managed pipeline, and in between some controls that go beyond what the standard ACES pipeline brings. And they put that, I mean, that's their pipeline that they have in their software, so in onset dailies, etc. But what they also put into the Asia FSHDR device, that's a 4-channel LUT box in 1U rec mount format. And they asked us if we can implement all the controls that are, let's say, meaningful for onset work for that film pipeline that they have, and put that into Livegrade. So what we can do is, as you would do with any LUT box, you just put them into a slot here, and then you have a if the LUT box, the FSHDR is in the right mode, you get these sets of controls, and maybe we go through them quickly so you get an idea what it can do and what it can't do.
Sure, absolutely.
So I mentioned it has the input transforms. So that's kind of similar to an ACES mode. You would choose what kind of input you have, what kind of log, if it's an Canon log or RE log C or whatever, S log 3. Then you have some scene referred controls. So these are then applied in linear, as we know what comes in, even if it's a log, the pipeline can transform the image into linear, then adjust, for example, the exposure and add 1 stop or reduce it by 1 stop. Also adjust the color temperature in linear. So this really simulates or is more or less the same than changing the color temperature in the camera, and also tint. Then comes the CDL part. That's like, as you would expect, the CDL controls. You can choose the working color space. This is a feature that just has been released a few days ago in ACES 1.2, that you can have different working color spaces for the CDL. The ColorFront pipeline had that for quite a while now, that you can choose in which color space you want to apply your CDL. And then what they have is, okay, they don't show up because I'm not connected to a device right now. So you have some what they call looks. It's film emulation looks and different kinds of, it's not really that they are heavy creative looks, but yeah, more like these subtle different, emulate different processes, for example, film processes. And you can blend between different looks. And if you're going to HDR, so if we are on an HDR output, like a PQ output here, you can choose an HDR amount, what they call it. This is a special ColorFront thingy. This depends a little bit about what you do with the highlights. You can have an SDR preview. So this simulates an SDR image on the attached HDR monitor if you have one. And then a few more technical things like the ambient light settings, which changes then the appearance a little bit, and you can adapt to that. The maximum PQ nit level for HDR again. And also that seems to be quite common is that you clamp, even if you're in Rec 2020, you clamp the color space to P3 because that's what the projector might be able to show later. So you're like limiting your color space and clamp, so you don't see any colors beyond beyond P3. So, and these are the settings that you can adjust here. They adjust the parameters in the FSHDR, and the FSHDR applies it to the signals that running through them. And if you store that look in the library, it stores all that all these settings here. And if you export this, say selected shot as, this then is becoming a ColorFront CFE file that then can be opened in any ColorFront software and will recreate not only the CDLs, but also the pipeline and all the other parameters that have been set around. This means that you're caught a little bit in that ColorFront world, of course, but if the dailies are done in a ColorFront software, it might be an interesting way because you get rid of all the discussions. What is the pipeline? What are the transforms? What did you do some adjustments? This is all like covered in that pipeline, and it will show up with the same controls and the same numbers and the same like settings.
Hey, Patrick?
Yeah.
Just curious, does the CFE work in SilverStack Lab?
No. So
will it?
Yeah, unfortunately, not even Livegrade knows what these parameters do to the image. So what we cannot show, for example, is scopes if we capture the original log signal, because we don't know what, Livegrade doesn't know what the parameters do to the pipeline. We have been in talks with ColorFront for quite a bit. If they license also their pipeline to us, that Livegrade can know and process its own images so that we can simulate that, but that's not done yet. So it might be something for the future. Right now, you need to go to a ColorFront software to benefit from that grading mode. Are there any questions for that?
Yeah, Chase Abrams has a question. Chase, just make sure you unmute yourself.
Hey, Patrick. So I already asked one of the questions. I think Brandon answered it, but I was using the CFE engine on this last project with the FSHDR, and everything worked out great. But the one thing I had issues with was getting accurate stills or accurate, log stills while using a CFE engine. So I was on, I found a workaround, but basically I had to feed it into another box and just save the HDR still as is. Is there any plans to make future updates so that HDR stills can be imported and adjusted later on?
Yeah, if I understood you right, that's exactly the problem, that Livegrade doesn't know how to process a log image the same way the ColorFront pipeline does it, because the processing only happens in the FSHDR device. Mm-hmm. And so without ColorFront licensing the pipeline to us, we're not able in Livegrade to recreate the same image, and that then applies to scopes, but also stills, export, thumbnail display, and also the like the viewer, so the viewer inside Livegrade, because it can only then either show the log image if you're capturing a log signal, or if you're capturing the finished, like processed image from the FSHDR, you're seeing obviously the processed image, but you cannot go back to the original because you didn't capture the original image. So that's the,
yeah.
the
I think in the I get you guys are kind of at a standstill. In the immediate time, it's fine. Like we got through this production because we were focusing on the SDR, and I found a way to HDR stills in color front, but I don't know if you guys can somehow get around that or talk to each other. That I feel like that might be a big issue later down the line, because everything we do is saving, it's still based, it's saving stills and showing them. And so, yeah.
Maybe when we're talking about HDR, what I did not mention before was that the things that we're working on HDR right now is also that we're planning to tag all the looks that you have in the shot library, what output color space they are. So if you're working in ACES, we obviously know what the output color space is because you chose an output transform in ACES. If you're loading your own LUT, we cannot know what the LUT is going to, but you can mark then the outgoing, like what the LUT is going to, P3 or Rec 09 or PQ or what that is. And that way we can also tag the exported stills properly. So that's a thing that we're working on. The viewing of HDR and different color spaces and the tagging on the computer monitor is done already, but storing that in the library is something that's still to be done. So that might take a little bit more, but we're always talking, when I mention something that's like to be coming soon, then we're talking about maximum like a 2 or 3 months.
And so Patrick and everyone, just to point out that like the CFE, I think a lot of us are so interested in the color front engine because of how human readable the text file is that you get, or the JSON file. And this can communicate the artistic and creative intent downstream, even if you're not in the room. You don't even have to send an email, theoretically. Someone can open up your CFE and see exactly everything that you did, how your viewing environment was set up, how you were working in Livegrade. And this is huge, because if you just send a CDL, as everyone knows, there's just values in it, that there's only 10 values. There's no transfer of information or intent. And usually when an operator applies a CDL, if they don't have a reference image, which happens all the time, they just cross their fingers and hope that whatever the CDL is correct. So the CFE, I think, Patrick, if we really want to move that direction, but I think if you guys supported CFE in SilverStack Lab, then we can almost always work in CFE, because Express Dailies and OSD would use it, SilverStack Lab would use it, Resolve would use it. It would become pretty universal.
So what ColorFront is showing when you ask them about CFE is that there are plugins for other vendors like grading systems that also support CFE. So kind of a ColorFront plugin for different other tools, and that might also be an interesting option, because I guess the ColorFront pipeline will not be for free for other vendors. I mean, that's a thing that ColorFront owns and is proud of, because it's really a nice looking pipeline also, or it produces nice looking images. But like, as I mentioned, this is an ongoing discussion, how far they want to open up and how far we can use it then. But I understand the point that it's a good alternative, because it's not only the creative little numbers of the CDL, but also the things around. What I mentioned before is what it can't do. It's really, we're stuck with the CDL still. So there is right now no curves, or so the things, for example, that Vanya showed with the custom curve, or the Luma curves, or also the versus curves where you can desaturate highlights or desaturate certain colors. That's also not able right now to put into a CFE file. I don't know what their plans are to add that, but so far this is again CDL based in a way. even if you have pipeline information and, for example, exposure on top at the end, but still it's CDL based.
Copy that. Jordan Livingston had a question. Jordan, you want to ask?
I don't think I had a question, Jamie. I was just saying that maybe there's a slight possibility there could be a plugin for SilverStack Lab, but I think that's more would come from the ColorFront side.
Right.
Yeah,
Brandon, Brandon's on the call. I think he should jump in for a second. Brandon, you want to comment on this if you're able to? Maybe not. All right, we'll come back to it, but I think everyone's excited for CFE. Are there any other questions about it?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, sorry about that one, guys. I've got 2 conference calls going on at the same time, so multiple headphones. So yeah, so the like Patrick said, we are actively talking and working out the things that he would need for the scopes and et cetera. It was a conversation that was started, and then I think we dropped it for a bit because we got busy, and so it's just a matter of circling back and getting that going again. And then the plugins, currently it's beta, not beta, almost beta in Resolve, and then it'll come to Nuke, Maya, Avid, and then kind of build from there. We're not 100% sure yet. And then to answer Kevin's question about Box.io support and CFE mode, currently no. It's just in the AJA FSHDR, but there are and have been conversations with Flanders just to see what's capable. It's a limitation of space on an FPGA and processing and et cetera. So that's something that we've breached with Flanders and team not too long ago. So yeah, so that's that. Not to take up too much time.
Thanks, man. Any other questions kind of based around like CDL, CFE, 3D LUTs, and reference images? Patrick, that's something we want to talk about. Those is like grabbing stills and why they're called shots and how they combine CDLs with images. Did you want to talk about that for a second? And a hopeful plan to separate those.
Now I'm getting into defense.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about why you consider a shot a CDL and an image?
So I would start differently. So we just recently discussed, because this was a topic in your previous session, and Vanya looked into that a lot and found that discussion about shots and stills and saving the look, but also saving stills, and so the reason why we all put that into the same table is because we feel that both of them have like an image and look metadata, and somehow it belongs together for both. So you don't want to just grab a still and be the log C. It would be helpful if you can later recall what the image actually looked like. So the look metadata belongs to that. And if you're capturing just the look, because that's the look for scene 10, then you still also want to have a still frame for that look metadata. So even if the purpose is totally different, you need to capture 10 stills for a certain scene just to cover all the different movements of the camera or what it is, but you need to capture one like look file or CDL for scene 10 also to like hand that over to dailies operators, for example. We felt always that they hold the same information. So that's why they end up in the same table or feel like the same thing for us. And what I found a very interesting idea is just to tag them differently and add 2 plus buttons to Livegrade. One is for shot and one is for like look, and the other one is for frame grab. And then they go into different directions, although they kind of consist of the same things. So that might be an easy direction that we want to follow now and see if that works. So that would be really a part of the beta then, where we would like to learn if that improves things, if you sort things automatically simply by choosing what you actually want to create from that frame grab. Is it the look for a scene something, or is it just a handful of frame grabs because you want the reference stills?
Yeah, so I just started sharing my screen just to illustrate what you're talking about. Like, this is how I currently do it. And I know other guys do it similar, but they do it different with like a rating system or whatnot. But like when I grab a CDL, like you can see like in the morning break, I might have 9 CDLs, but I took 45 reference images, right? Because I'm just sitting there with the Stream Deck hitting grab, 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 grab. And then I separate it out. But this, at the end of the day, like this makes it easy for me to export. I know that this is the actual look, right? That's the CDL. And then I know that these are separate. These are just the reference images. You know what I mean? And I feel like if they're combined in the same thing, it requires, like when you start to export and save it, you have to do it separately, I find. Maybe I could show you that. Like if both of these were together, and you go to, yeah, this is always like shots and looks and stills. It's kind of confusing that there's 3 different things, you know? But if you do this and then the path wildcard stuff lines up, like we should talk about this at some point too, how to make sure that like there's at least a starting template for how people name CDLs and how people name CFEs, etc. You know, for long form or for commercials.
Maybe a question about that is there, do you feel like the naming conventions are converging somehow to some common thing, or is it still that a lot of productions simply require broadly different kinds of names or naming conventions?
Well, the way I like to work is that I like to have my CDLs and references explain themselves if I'm not in the room. So if I send off my files and for some reason, like the dailies operator can't get a hold of me and it's a brand new show or whatever, let's just say, or someone takes my files, they should know what show I'm on, what season, what episode, what camera, what scene, etc. And you know, I know some people on a show for a couple of years, they'll just do like scene 22, take 1 or whatever, but that doesn't illustrate like the whole scope of what that CDL belongs to. This will change when we have CFE because hopefully that information will be in the header, right? The name of the project, the shooting day, the date, etc., all that relevant information. But I mean, it should be pretty straightforward. It should be show, you know, it should encompass show, date, date, scene, take, camera, etc. But your file should be able to explain themselves without you having to explain it to someone else. And I think that's the important thing to communicate downstream. Chris Bolton had something to weigh in, and I'll get to everyone's questions. I see you guys raising your hands.
Yeah, might kind of weigh in on that, and I mean, I understand the logic of the stills and looks all being the same thing. I think that's actually what makes Livegrade really great. It's just sorting that so at the end of, you know, the day or midway through the day when you actually have to deliver these files to post, that you're not exporting, you know, 100 CDLs that the post guy has to then sift through. You're literally only giving them the handful of adjustments that actually are required for them to implement. But yeah, being able to filter, to have like a folder that has, you know, intended for stills export and another folder that's intended for look export. I mean, how you export that, whether it includes a grab or not, is sort of up to the user, but having a way in Livegrade to actually be able to do that would be really nice. At the moment, everyone's just kind of creating their own workflow to make that work, but to actually have discrete bin where you could just select the day, hit export, and you have predefined values already defined for your stills folder and your look folder would be, I think, really, really great. And to add on to this, the whole CFE thing, the reason why we find that so compelling is because everything that we want to be able to, we want everything to be tracked really in an elegant format. So we're basically calling CFE in DIT-WIT CDL 2.0. You know, where everything's, all the major decisions are tracked, and that's why we're all really excited about it.
Awesome. Patrick, any notes, or Vanya?
No, thank you, Chris.
Maybe from me, like there is this new AMF thing which will be coming in the upcoming version of Livegrade, that's kind of the CFE version for ACES. So maybe that's helpful just as a note that might be interesting in the future.
Awesome.
Hello, Simon.
Jordan.
Hi, Patrick.
So everyone knows Simon works with Pomfort as well.
Yeah, you might have seen me in support.
Yeah. Jordan Livingston has a question. Jordan, you're up.
So yeah, I mean, I'm echoing what a lot of people are saying in the comments and what we're already talking about here. But the way that I used to work before the new Livegrade, which is something I kind of miss a little bit, is I sort of manually organize things in my head by scene and then by camera. And so I would have like a base look for the scene, and then if there was an offset because of a different lens or a different filter, then I would just have like the B look. And so I really wish there was just some way where almost like the looks were expandable, where there was some sort of drop down where you could have a basic look and then modifiers for that basic look that you could qualify by either, you know, take or camera, so that you can get back to the base look when you're only making a sort of a minor change. The other thing I wanted to add is that, and I think a lot of other people have this experience too, is a lot of times if we don't have good clean time code coming in for whatever reason, the AC has an ancient old version of a Teradek or something, and we don't have good time code, the PFLA trackback into SilverStack fails to work. And so I wish there were a drop down where you could select a range of clips where you could say this look applies to A camera clip 1 through 10, and then this clip over here applies to B camera clip 12 through 16, and be able to sort of manually force that track back in the PFLA workflow. Those are my thoughts.
I will take notes about the look matching that might happen, that you have a bunch of looks that don't carry timecode, because then I agree, then look matching is then more or less manually needed. Then really you're like, this has this and this has this. But if we allow something that you have these ranges, like these 10 have the same look and these, then you would be much quicker. So I will take that to the SilverStack colleagues. I find the Simon?
Yeah, note from me, in SilverStack it should also be possible to match like by a clip identifier. So you're matching like the clips by name, by the clip name and by the clip identifier. So for example, with Arri cameras, you can like set up your clip identifier to follow the naming scheme of the Arri clips, and then you can match it by this. And there's also like a matching thing where you can match like by, I don't remember how it was exactly, but you can like match by scene, shot, take or something like that. You can match by that. So there are other possibilities than only matching via time code, if that's helpful to you. I don't know. It sounds like a little bit that is what you actually want.
Well, that is helpful, but what happens is oftentimes you're matching these clips back hours later. And so it would be great if the range was recorded as part of the PFLA so that you didn't have to remember where they go. So in other words, if I could literally select from a drop-down menu, apply this to this, apply this to that, or even if there was just a field where you could enter it into field manually, then it would be easier than having to sort of manually reconstruct your day.
Maybe about this topic about the base look and then the refinements. I find that interesting. Is that a common way of thinking, that you have a look that's basically working for almost everything of a scene, but then you have two shots?
Yeah,
that
that's how I used to work manually. I mean, obviously we want things to be more automated, but back in the previous days, I sort of just did this manually. So you know, the DP might be lighting and setting up and even rehearsing, and you're creating a look and you say, okay, this is the look for the scene based on this A camera. And then the next thing you know, they've added a B camera to the scene, or they've added a steady cam, or even just changing a lens. And I would just sort of version that look. So I would have retained the main look and versioned it, and, you know, added like the letter B or the letter C. But it would be great if there was a way to do that in an automated way, where you would have, like, again, your base look, and then you could have little sub looks that are connected to that. I think that would just help in our organization. At least mentally, that's how I organize things. I don't know about everyone else.
It's all useful. I think everyone's going to organize differently too, and I think that's also because of what exists in Livegrade and what doesn't.
Maybe speaking about organization, I wanted to show something that's not like a direct answer to that request. So I took notes for that because I find that interesting, of refining like a master look into sub topics or versions, or how you ever call them. So I find that interesting.
Hey Patrick, just so you and everyone else sees, this is an actual CFE that Brandon just sent me. So like it's easy to read, and just so you guys see like the kind of information that is recorded in this. So we know the input color space, we know the adjustments that we made, right? Color space is all in there, the adjustments, so it's pretty obvious. And if you have looks, but I feel like there could be more information. Brandon and I were talking about this. I just stuck some stuff down here where it's like having the name and phone number of the person who created that file, kind of important, right? And you get like extra notes that could be parsed in from the notes section, you know, in Livegrade library. The show isn't listed in here at all, right? So what show are you working on? The episode number isn't listed in here at all either. And then versions, like to Jordan's point, like if you have a look, but you're like, oh, this just tweaked a little bit for B camera, or maybe this is the 10th iteration of a creative look that you guys are trying to establish before the show starts. You know, there's a lot more useful stuff. This just came up right now, but just so everyone sees what this looks like, this is so much better than CDL. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Ben Hopkins, you had a question.
Hey, thanks guys. First of all, Patrick and Pomfort gang, it wasn't too long ago where some of these tools and be able to Livegrade was just blowing our minds, and it's amazing to see how simple that really was. And bravo for providing so much great feedback and tools over the years. I'm sitting here just tripping over it. Like, I don't mean like tripping, man, but like literally I'm stumbling a little bit in a good way, because there's just so many ways to utilize your tool set. So I appreciate you guys sticking in there with us and solving things over the years. I'm not sure if there's a way to do this now or if it's an implementation request, but I'm just at that point personally where I'm trying to move from just taking log stills and actually recording the log signals. And I know that there's some capability of a crash at a really unopportune time on a shoot. So I kind of like abandon it for the rest of that shoot. But to be able to record live video log of the cameras, but have it associated on a shot by shot, and I'm using shot the way you guys use it, on a shot by shot basis, with and then go back later, because my problem with stills is that it's just never fast enough, and there's always motion blur, and it's just not a good still. And I really want to provide great stills for my DP and forward post. So I want to be able to scrub back through that clip later and find, you know, here's 3 or 4 that really represent the scene, and have those go into a bucket that's not really a shot with a CDL so much. Back to Jamie's point, you know, he's doing that with different bins, but have like these are your stills, your reference stills. Here's the reference video they came from, and here's your CDL, and that is what the shot is. And you can kind of go into seeing the shots and open that view, so you can kind of quickly see what what each shot contains. Oh, this one doesn't reference video. I pull stills on the fly. This one does, just so that it, you know, it's a real fluid way to go in and see, because, you know, working on the fly as we do sometimes, you know, oh shoot, it didn't record, it didn't auto record, whatever device we're using to record. Sometimes we might have video, sometimes we don't, but we don't want it to break. We just want to see what's in there in an easy way.
So I didn't get all of this. I don't know if it was just my audio, but if I understood you right, you're saying when you're capturing things, even if it's stills or video or like the CDL for the scene, they all should be associated, but you feel like video should be, the recorded video should be also considered. So it's not only the stills and the CDL, but also the recorded video, and they all should kind of belong together, but still be in separate things or bins, that they don't intermix too much when you want to export things. Is that what you mentioned?
Well, I'm sorry if my audio is
Yeah, Ben, you're breaking up.
Across.
Yeah, no, it gets
Let
worse.
me actually move this to a different location. Real quick, I can do that. Hold on, I'm just gonna make this a little quicker.
Hey, Ben, while you're moving, we're going to take a question from Curtis Abbott real quick.
Okay.
Curtis, you're up.
Hey guys, so Ben, just to answer your question, so on the last show I had a deck link card capturing every channel of video. So if I had 3 cameras going, I was capturing the log image from the Box.io return. So I was capturing log, and I could go back at any time and regrade that if I needed. So that is a possibility. It works. But my question is, so if I record a video, the last project I did, I just recorded a video every single take 1, 2, 3, all of it. But sometimes I would grab a still so that I could send my CDL, and then if I forgot, then Livegrade would only export the first frame of that video as the still. So if there's a way that when I'm grabbing that video, if I could go back and choose my keyframe that I want to export, that way I don't even have to grab stills, because the entire time I'm rolling on video. That would be perfect. That would be ideal, because then I don't even have to grab stills at all. I can use my video, and then I can go back and I can fine tune and pick the perfect frame. That's what I would like to see. I have a second part to this as well, is sharing, being able to take a bin and be able to send one bin with, let's say, 10 CDLs or whatever to my second unit DIT, so that he has the reference stills as well as the CDL values and all that stuff. I know that it's possible. The last time I talked to you guys about it, I had to basically go into a deep-rooted folder and send it, and it was kind of complicated to send the whole project. Rather than sending a whole project, I would love to just send specific shots or whatever, and somebody else could import them into their Livegrade project. So,
so the sharing part, maybe first. So the sharing part is totally understood, and Simon, if I'm not promising too much, this is more or less done already, or at least heavily worked on. Okay, so because right now you can do the PFLA, what we call it, the Pomfort Livegrade look archive thingy. So you can export parts of your library, as you mentioned, like a bin or a shooting day or a folder or whatever you choose, and export that, hand that over to someone else, and you can import that into a different Livegrade instance. But what's lacking is that the stills, so the actual recorded, for example, full HD frames come with it, the log frames come with it, so they don't right now. And that's something that's totally understood. That's really a missing thing. That's a pain, and this is something very high on the list. Yeah.
Hey Patrick, just to follow that up, when you're sharing a PFLA, it would be amazing to have the wildcards and then the library bin column structure setup as well. Like, because rebuilding all that stuff by hand to match how the other unit was doing it is just, it's the worst thing ever. You know what I mean? We want, like, because a lot of times it takes so much time to figure out what information will come over the SDI that will auto-populate the columns in the library folder, right? Or the library section. And once you have that figured out, you don't want to rebuild it if you send that to someone else. So like, I would love if the sharing like one-to-one matches exactly what my project was looking like with wildcards, images, folder structure, etc. Just to illustrate, okay. I'll just show this again real quick. So like all this column data right here, sometimes it takes forever to figure out what will come through. And I just discovered this recently that like over SDI, it's now picking up like shutter, ISO, white balance, ND filter, even our lenses, and even the clip name, which I know for color front processing is super helpful. But to rebuild all of this, right, because you have so many different options, it's kind of, it's a big waste of time. So if I send my project to somebody, I want them to have the same columns available to them. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick, and then we'll take another question.
I was just, the other question was the question about, Vanya, did you follow up?
Changing the keyframe of the video.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's on the list. So I'll make one thing, because that's also a little bit sad that you only have the first frame as a thing and you cannot create new stills from a video. So that's noted. Thank you.
Is there a possibility with the Pomfort Cloud to share Livegrade projects that are almost synced between, say, multiple units?
That's something I have something to show about that, or I brought something. Maybe I have one thing that I wanted to share that we're working right now concerning the organization of things. I would like to share my screen.
Go for it.
Once more.
And guys, I see the hands up. We'll get to your questions in a second.
Okay, just a quick one, because that was mentioned before, like the organization. So what you see is, this is a mock-up, but that's something that's like, that's really worked on right now, is you have your very simple folder structure up here. So you have, for example, 2 units or the shooting day bins or however your thing is. But the cool thing here is whatever you selected here will have a view that's automatically populated. So because you have all these scene names, or because you have all your columns here, you can tell Livegrade that you want to have a certain like outline to be created from the shots that are in that bin here. So for example, you have in that shooting day 2, you have shots that have scene 10, 10A, 10B, and 14, and Livegrade will automatically create that outline down here based on the selection up here. So these are only the scenes that are like within that shooting day. And if you would like select the shooting day 3, that outline down here would be a different one, because it's different scenes that have been shot there. So that's because we felt this outline up here, maintaining that is one view on the project, for example, by shooting day, but there is the other view, for example, by script or by unit or by, so there are so many different aspects where you could browse and navigate into a project. So that might help organize things a little bit better if you have really long lists, or a ton of episodes, or several seasons even of a show, and you have really thousands of shots. This automatically created outline will give you a different way of browsing your library. So that might be something quite helpful, we hope. We call
it's going to be hugely helpful, Patrick. Hugely helpful.
Groups, what we call them.
Yeah, and so from me shortly, maybe this is only a way how you would organize your CDL and your reference still images. For example, we could like introduce like another level where we would like split the scene up into like reference stills and CDLs, for example, automatically. That would be something that might be possible in the future.
Yeah, so that I think it's a little bit like almost boring to show because it's just another outline. But when you see it, that you select something in the library and you get an automatically created outline of shots or scenes or episodes or cameras or something, you can choose what the outline is. So what columns are used to create that outline. So we're pretty excited. So it's like a little bit of a nerdy thing, but if you see it, I think you will like it.
When do you plan to have this available and working?
It's more days than weeks. I think Simon is like working on that already. We have architecture is more or less thought through, and I just brought that mock-up because we couldn't show anything yet. So we might look at this next week already, or in 2 weeks, working internally, and we hope to have a beta like in 3 weeks or something. So because for that we would really like your feedback if we hit quite a few points here of that organizing topic.
Yes, organizing is super key. Ben Hopkins, let's finish your question.
Yeah, can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks a lot, Curtis, for what you said, because it's very similar. What I was really saying, Patrick, is that if I'm recording video as my reference, I want to go back when I have a little bit of time later and scrub through and pick not just one frame to be the reference frame, like the poster frame, but I want to go and get like 5 or 6 reference shots that, like you said, Patrick, represents the movement through the scene. But I want them all to be associated to just the one shot. And I want to be able to tag those as not as having CDL writers with them, right? The shot has the CDL with it. The shot also would have associated the full video of it. And the shot would have as many stills as I want, reference stills associated with it. And I can click on that shot and have it open up and show me, maybe with a little pop-up, how many reference stills are associated with this. Do I want to go look through them in the library slot and delete some of them? Or, how do I want to manage that? But still, it's just one shot in the shot viewer list.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we have something like that in Silverstack. It's called cue points, where you can mark like certain points in the video. And I think it sounds like you want something like that for like Livegrade, that you can like mark certain points in the video as, yeah, this is something important to me. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, sure. I mean, what you're talking about is like putting keyframes or marker, like in a timeline sense for editorial, putting markers, right? If those markers were the shots that I would want to export, it would be great when the DP comes back to just bring the video view up and just kind of go to those markers and say, here's the shots I've selected that represent the scene. And, maybe they have a different idea, and then I can scrub in the video timeline, set a new marker, delete markers. And at the end of the break, for the film break, I can just say export markers as reference stills and have them associated, with the same naming convention as my CDL for that.
Actually, cool. Hey, just to speak to that, Patrick and team, Chandler Tucker, who I'll open this up to, during the Livegrade demo that we did like a week or 2 ago, he showed a great example of this. Like, he actually records video. I'll let him explain, but it's exactly to Ben's point that we need more Silverstack features in Livegrade. And I'll let Chandler, you're up.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, hi, gentlemen. So unfortunately, for some reason, I got blocked on my DIT
my fault,
computer.
sorry.
That's okay, no worries. So I can't actually show this to you, unfortunately. But if Jamie has given you guys access to that, or if you can get access to that video, then maybe you guys can watch and actually see what happened. But so basically what I'm currently doing is I am recording a log image of every single take from Livegrade. Then I'm using the clip identifier from that to save a PFLA of every setup and then bring that over into Silverstack. Then once I get into Silverstack, I can use that PFLA to repopulate all my metadata, bring all my looks over from Livegrade into Silverstack. Now this is in a color-only workflow, so this is assuming that I am not accessing any of the actual camera footage itself because my loaders are doing that. So this is a way for me to kind of post-work on footage, even though, instead of having to literally just work Livegrade. So once everything's been brought over as a PFLA, I can then bring up that multi-view that you guys have, which is incredibly awesome, and allows us to basically take a look at all of the previous setups and show my DP in a 12 frame image, everything that he shot up until that point. And he can use that as reference as we're lighting the next setup to look at, we got things from this angle, light was coming from here, we were bluer, we were whatever, that sort of thing. And it's a fantastic reference when on one monitor I can have that up, on my other monitor I can have our live image up, and he can see side by side exactly what we're doing. And speaking to what was just said earlier, once I'm in there, I'm then able to scrub through my video and then pick the exact stills that I want. So I'm not getting motion blur, I'm not getting people blinking or weird looks on their faces or whatever, that sort of thing. And so it's a really fantastic way that I'm doing things, and a lot of the guys were really excited about it. But I think they were really hoping that maybe a couple of those feature sets could be implemented in just Livegrade. So maybe there'd be a way to pull up multiple stills, into a multi-view within Livegrade, or maybe if you recorded video clips, you could go back and then take stills from it after the fact, or something of that nature. So it seemed to be a workflow that a lot of people were very interested in. And again, I'm happy to go into more detail about this if I can ever get that computer up and running for you. But anyway, I just think there's a lot of really awesome features within SilverStack that are fantastic for when you're doing the work in SilverStack, but they'd be extremely helpful within Livegrade as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the list. We watched the video. We agree with you. Like, this multi-grid view would be awesome in Livegrade. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work, so I don't think we will manage it for the next version. But the version after that, it's high priority on the list. It's just unfortunately a lot of work, because like, you also maybe want to like view several slots at once, for example, so that you can see camera A, camera B, camera C, camera D. And then also like you want to load multiple shots into the library slot and then view all those things in this grid view. It's unfortunately not easy to like tag that on now, but it's high priority. It's up there. We want to do this.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it, Simon. Thank you.
That's awesome, guys. Just to comment back on like consistency, that bullet point, like that kind of thing will be huge for us when we're 6 months into a project. And I know you already have covered it, but searching, like a big thing for DITs is anticipation. If we're shooting scene 6 on a movie and it's 3 months in, but we shot scene 5 and it's the same, say bedroom 3 months earlier, like it's our job to have the same look up on the monitors, like applied, and then have a reference image of what we shot 3 months earlier, so the DP can come in, see it, and go, oh, okay, this is what we did. And it's that kind of anticipation that and fast anticipation that makes us better at our jobs and makes us more reliable. So those kind of tools in Livegrade would be huge. I'm going to open it up to Ryan McGregor. I haven't heard from you yet. Make sure you unmute yourself.
All right, I think this works. Thank you. So I like to track all my metadata within Livegrade quite a bit, including things like what set it is, so I can do a search for what set. I'm just requesting, can you please make it so that I can change the metadata of multiple shots or stills all at the same time, kind of like we can do in SilverStack. So within Livegrade, just like if you can have multiple stills selected, and then in the info section on the right, I can go in and change, say, the filter, and it applies to all of the stills I have selected at the moment. Because otherwise it's a manual process and I go and change like 20 manually,
What?
Yeah, also on the list.
Yeah, it's also on the list, but it's also a big thing. So it's some effort related there. But
Ryan, what would be a typical field that you would need to work on afterwards on multiple shots?
Kind of all of them. Because some of them, like some of them will track over metadata, like over time code or over the video's metadata, but some won't. So even if for whatever reason, the LDS is down, and I didn't change the focal length, for example.
Okay.
That's something I might have to change for multiple shots. Or I use your custom 1, 2, and 3s. Like my custom 3 is usually, you know, interior hospital set day, for example. That would be another one I might have to change.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Aaron Pico, you're up.
Okay, copy. Just looking at my notes. Oh, speaking to what you were talking about earlier, Jamie, about the about translating what you're doing on first unit to somebody on second unit, or to somebody else's cart if they're coming in to take over for you or something. I know that SilverStack Lab has a export preferences. You can import and export preferences. So something like that would probably be handy in SilverStack for that purpose, where you could export exactly how your project is, and that could accompany the PFLA files. Would that be something that is easy to implement? I have a couple other questions too, but I don't know if you want me to just ask them all now or just kind of get back in line.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's see if Patrick has a response.
For that, I mean, that's something that we heard earlier before, like wildcards, column layouts, all these things. SilverStack has it, LiveGrade doesn't. We know that, and can't say more about that right now. I hope we can improve that soon. It's not one of the on the top list right now, but it's heard definitely.
Yeah, if you have another question,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, just trying to see if it actually fits into kind of the groove of what are we kind of just talking about right now? Is the main groove of our meeting kind of just features we would like or changes we would like to see happen? That was for Jamie. I didn't know if are we keeping on topic here by just kind of bringing up all the points of how we would like to see it change or improve? Is that kind of where we're?
Let's save that, if you don't mind, towards the end.
Okay, yeah, I'll just hold on to it. Thanks.
All right, cool. Teamer, you're up. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hello. So on the topic of consistency, I was also going to mention some kind of backup system for both Livegrade and SilverStack. I just so happened to have my file system get corrupted on my laptop. And luckily I had a time machine backup. But if there's a way to maybe use the cloud, for example, to offload all of my projects from Livegrade and from SilverStack over time, so in case anything happens or I need to use it on a different machine, so I can just pull it up. That's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, maybe it's not so much a reply about the backup topic, because I think backup is really a multi-layer strategy. So there are, for example, yeah, I think that's a topic. But you mentioned the cloud thing, and I want to like bring up again. It's a screenshot, unfortunately, because again, it's something that's currently worked on, and I don't have a proper demo. Just let me show you. So that's like one of the first screenshots slash mockups of the Livegrade cloud. So you will have the same project outline that you have in Livegrade on the left side. In the middle, you have your shots. You see that there are a ton of columns missing still. And on the right side, you have like a basic layout of the nodes with not really the color wheels, but at least the numbers and the names of lots, etc. So that it's kind of a look representation. And for us, cloud thing or uploading information to a server is like, we separate that into two things for now. As you might have seen from SilverStack, it's a push upload only, which has already the benefit that you can merge information from several workstations. So either if you have two SilverStacks copying on different units, or even on the same unit because you simply need the bandwidth, And you can merge these two projects automatically. So you would have like the cloud project, and under the cloud project, there is one Livegrade and another Livegrade and another Livegrade. So you could at least merge things from multiple units into the cloud. But right now, the arrows go only from the local workstation to the cloud. So the merged thing will only show up in the browser for now. And we know that arrows can also go in the different direction, and that's something that we're aware of. But this is like the next step for us. What we felt that might be quite interesting, because the Silverstack Cloud works out kind of nicely as something like a backup, at least not in a disaster recovery backup sense, but in a you're not at your cart sense, where you need to access like a different season or a different project, even where that might be on a different computer or on a different machine. And so for that, having access in a browser to all your project information is something that helps a lot in Silverstack. And we feel, because a lot of you guys are maintaining, we just heard that from, who said it, Curtis? No. That is like the multi-edit. Ryan McGregor said that a lot of information is really maintained quite properly and comprehensively in Livegrade. Also, we feel that having the Livegrade library in a cloud system also might help. And having that, we will, together with introducing the Livegrade cloud kind of upload thing, at the same time, we will have a version of Silverstack that can pull looks there, so you can have the look matching that not through PFLA but through the network, because you now have the Livegrade information up here, you have the Silverstack information up there, and why cannot Silverstack just pull from the Livegrade silo in the cloud and pull the looks from there, because the metadata is there, and you don't need to carry around PFLA files from one workstation to the other, or even send that from set to a facility where the dailies are done, for example, with Silverstack, and use, or for Silverstack Lab, and use the cloud as the way of transferring the look. The nice thing is that they will really show up the minute or the second after you hit that plus button. So you will have an immediate update of looks in the cloud, but you then decide on the Silverstack side when you want to pull them again.
Patrick, that's huge. It feels like we're in the future now. Thank you so much.
I mean, if every thermostat has its own cloud, we felt like our or your tools should also deserve their online companion somehow. So that's also I think that's the details that this library things. So really these nasty things in Livegrade that we're working on. This is one of the huge projects, and the other one is the cloud effort. So we have like these two are the projects that we do now. Now, as support is much lower than usually.
Hey, one thing to make mention of for the cloud, even for the Livegrade version, I think the still that you were showing, I'm personally much less interested in the CDL values and that kind of information that you're showing. While it's cool, I think knowing how like the programming goes, you guys have to focus on what's more important. You know, I think the metadata is huge, like tracking. I want to easily be able to search on my phone, like scene 23 from episode 6, which might have happened 2 months ago. And then I want to see the CDLs and the images, et cetera, and all the metadata come through. Like that should be the biggest priority, I feel like. But knowing the values of a CDL, I probably might not ever need that. Just to throw that out there.
Noted. Okay, thank you.
Kyle Hoekstra, you're up.
Hey, Patrick. It's kind of almost two-part. One is when exporting like a PFLA to hand over a day player or a second unit team coming in, it'd be awesome if when we export that, the full still within a group that I select to export, meaning the log still plus the CDL correction on top of that, can export with that instead of just the little thumbnail. Because then I find myself having to constantly like export reference stills specifically for the second unit versus them just getting everything at once. And then a next step on that would be if there's any way to be able to network multiple computers off of one library, meaning like if I have two systems on set, I would love to be able to see my grades and everything all working on the same library. Specifically, like sometimes I'll have a laptop running all my live grades so I can quickly move to different sets. But then I also have a larger system that I use for transcoding on set. This is more for commercial work that I would love to be able to open up, pull those CDLs and LUTs if my laptop is, say, on a different set doing something else. But it's all wirelessly connected.
Maybe a quick reply on the still exchange. That's what I mentioned before. This is really like a missing thing, that the exchange of look information is not carrying over the full res stills. And as Simo mentioned, it's not like too easy to get these assets included, but because it's a little bit about where they are stored and the paths and everything. But we're trying to get that clear, kind of. So this is a topic that we're well aware of. Maybe a question on these two systems. So is it that these are running simultaneously, or are you switching back and forth between, because one is the smaller setup and one is the larger? So how is that you have two stations with Livegrade with you on set?
Yeah, exactly. So all my LUT boxes and everything are all shared over the same network. So both computers have access to the same LUT boxes. It's just a thing of, I can have my laptop on and running immediately when I get to set off a DC, but my larger system, AC, isn't always on, and it's a little, it takes more effort to get things rolling. So in terms of speed and effort, I try to keep everything on a laptop for Livegrade. But then if I turn on my Mac Pro and I need to start transcoding and pulling those LUTs and everything like that, it'd be awesome, instead of having to export CDLs and LUTs and everything from my laptop onto a network share, if I could just have Livegrade on my large system connect to the same library and have access to that stuff.
Maybe you can contact us in support, because we might, I don't know if we should go into detail, but there might be a solution if you're like switching back and forth between them and not using them simultaneously, maybe, and if they're on the same network. Because the more general solution would be like letting like syncing the libraries like over the air or over larger network and servers. But in the case that they're really almost like on the same cable, more or less, there could be an easier solution. Maybe we can follow up on that, because I would be interested if I understood that right.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ryan Nguyen, you're up.
Hey, Patrick. So I wanted to kind of take it around a bit, back down to the user experience with the interface with Livegrade. I was using my iPhone the other day using burst photography, and what that user interface did is it took those photos and collapsed them all into a single still. And it wasn't until I would open that it would present me even more. Where I'm going with this is, when I'm on set, I'm taking lots and lots of stills. I press it as often as I can whenever something's happening on screen, just for as much reference material as possible. And, all of that is within the context of the same scene, the same take even. So we have this problem of having few shots, many stills. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about, doing something like that, where you consider that like you treat it like burst photography, that just for easy navigation. Because, at the end of the day, you can end up with hundreds and hundreds of these.
I think that plays well into that topic that we had before of splitting the CDL for that scene and all these little shots that you take, even if they come from video, what we learned before, that they could actually be just markers or extracted from a video, or they be just a ton of like plus button pressed and you have a ton of things. I think we when we tackle that, we are aware that these tons of stills clutter your library. That's really the actual problem, that you don't see the CDL anymore if you have all these stills in between. So getting that organized or sorted away in some way, that's definitely part of that effort, that you can switch between, I want to see all the stills and browse through them because I need to find that certain movement or that certain moment in a take, or I just want to see that one CDL for that take, and please don't show me all this, like don't fold up all these stills. So that's definitely part of that discussion. Yes.
Very cool, thank you. And one follow-up question to that, unrelated, is, and I'm sorry if we did talk about this earlier, but what is your latest feelings towards further development on the Livegrade Air remote, using iOS devices to grade on the fly, knowing that you're connected to, you know, Livegrade on the network?
You mean like the remote control for Livegrade?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What can I say? We didn't touch it for a while. Let's say like that.
Yeah, we noticed.
Yeah, you might have noticed. So the last time we talked about it was just a few days ago when we thought, let's just put a few more buttons in it so that we can control the router with it. That was it yesterday, Vanya, when we talked about this?
Oh, please, that'd be awesome.
So if this increases the awesomeness of the Livegrade universe, we might reconsider.
Oh, it would. I would happily upgrade to Studio if I could just have a kit phone connected to your network and trigger your routing that way. That sounds amazing.
Did you know that the remote control is part only of the Studio version?
Oh, okay. Well,
no, just kidding. No, yeah, I guess we need to somehow if we don't get much support about things, we feel like they are not used, but maybe it just means that they work kind of okayish. But
it's my belief that the Livegrade remote was developed way ahead of its time. You know, I really think given the prevalence of wireless networking now on film production sets, there's a lot of untapped potential here. You know, and thinking about different macros and things that can be triggered from the iPhone is really useful, especially if you're in a tight spot.
Okay, yeah, is noted. I mean, there is another app that has buttons that controls other things from camera vendors. So I think it should not be too complicated to add a few buttons that control things for us, because that is what these devices can do very well. Yeah, it's really something that we should dig out from behind. Like,
can you guys merge Pocket Control and Livegrade Air? I mean, that just seems like the most obvious thing.
Yeah, that's what I just thought, that we might need to think about that again. We had, I mean, as you mentioned before, it's probably really has been ahead of its time, because we thought about headless Livegrade, just walking around and grading on touch interfaces, but that never was really the thing, because the card is really a thing where things happen. But you're right that with the better and better Wi-Fi infrastructure and sets, it might be worth considering that there are a lot of situations where you're not at your card, or might need to do changes quickly from your pocket in the phone.
Yeah, a friend of ours recently did a shoot in like the bottom of like a battleship, and he was using Pocket Control and a Wi-Fi network to control the cameras, the colors and whatnot, because there was no room for barely a 17-inch monitor. So it's a tool, you know, that we wouldn't use often, but it would be amazing to have. Chris Bolton, you're up.
Hello again. Yeah, I mean, for me, like the priorities is, of course, sorting by scene, take, camera, etc., and also having a way to bin separately the looks you're creating, the stills you're creating, the videos you're creating. But on a note of sort of handling, how do you handle those files going between computer and project, providing you're not on the same network? One simple method might be, instead of having Livegrade automatically always dump folders into the creative structure that it creates right now. Like for me, the little cheat I do is I basically manage where the videos are going, and then all the stills follow suit with that. So I can actually copy what I think is the bin from my project over and give it to a DIT, and they can pull that in. But if there's a simple way to sort of encapsulate those per project, and then have that transferred as sort of like media, and then your PFLA is kind of like your XML where you're just pointing to those folders. If there's a way to sort of resynchronize fairly easy on another computer, that might be a more simplified route than coming up with a completely new workflow. I mean, just for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, the future is definitely going to be all these databases are going to be online and they're going to be able to be pulled, providing that there's encryption and it's safe, because studios, of course, are concerned about this.
Maybe a question about this having stills online on a server and the encryption and security requirements. How is that usually working when if you're using a dailies platform where you're uploading something, or even if you're communicating stills on drives, are you signing some kind of, or are there requirements from productions that differ from production, or is there a standard way of what you promise the production to like take care of the footage? How is this data?
Yeah,
there's no standard whatsoever, and I think they just hope that we're doing it properly.
Yeah, I think Disney probably has the most stringent sort of policies when it comes to that. For an example, if you're transferring any media that isn't through their sort of private Asperic account, that you're literally putting it onto an encrypted drive of some sort that has to be unlocked using a key. But I mean, when it comes to a server, I mean, anything that's presented online, for example, like in Pix, they generate a login for you. You have to have you know, a long password credential, and then on top of that, they have two-factor authentication. So I mean, that's sort of their level of security that they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan McGregor, you had a question. Ryan, you hear me?
Oh, sorry, Jamie. No, I don't think I do for you.
Oh, the mapping individual routing control.
Oh yeah, sure. It was more just like I already use Livegrade Studio, and I love the custom configurations. It has been life changing. But if we could, you know, essentially replace the control panel from the router and put that as separate buttons on a Stream Deck, that would kind of streamline things in a lot of ways with the Azure routers. You know what I mean? So I could control, say, my a DIT monitor and put any input I want on that and program those buttons to something like a Stream Deck.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe one thing on the router control. So if you're if you have a bit of time, you can do that already, because there are keyboard shortcuts for selecting the ins and outs of a router. So who had the background before? It's gone on that page. Like the orange inputs and outputs where these wires go in between. So you already have keyboard shortcuts where you can select the in and then you select the out, and then a new connection is done between the in and out. And as these are keyboard shortcuts, you can map that already to the what they call the Stream Deck button devices. But maybe Vanya can talk about Stream Deck briefly and mention what's happening with Stream Deck.
Yeah, the Stream Deck integration is on its way. So it will be in the new beta version that will be released hopefully mid of May. So that will be better than just mapping everything with keyboard shortcuts. So you will have a real integration with the Stream Deck app where you configure your Stream Deck. So all the actions you have in Livegrade will be in there with proper icons, etc., etc. And I think that will be helpful. And I know this router configuration, I heard that before, that we will solve that as well.
Amazing. Hey, so just so everyone knows, Chandler was talking earlier about like a multi-view thing inside of SilverStack that we would love to see inside of Livegrade. He has a demo of it now. I just want to have him show it real quick for anyone who missed it in the original Livegrade video, but also so it gets encapsulated in this session so that Patrick's team can see it and reference it later. Go ahead, Chandler, you can share your screen.
Yeah, 1 second. All right, is everybody seeing this all right?
Yep.
Okay, great. So here's an example of, go back to, I gotta clear up some stuff that way. Okay, so once you're here in SilverStack, you know, we've got a particular folder or a bin. In this example, it's scene 34. I've selected shots that I wanna use. Once you come over to the color tab, it sets it up here in this grid view. You can have up to 12 of them selected at a time. And then you can actually use that, and I'm gonna switch this over to, I'm gonna stop sharing. Is everybody seeing my face right now?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if we, okay. So as you can see, the beauty of this is being able to have these up as reference on the screen while you've got a live image up for the DP to make any decisions he needs to be able to see color, contrast, exposure, all of that in line with what's actually being shot. So this is something that me and my DPs use on a very regular basis. And so as we were mentioning earlier, it's something we would definitely brought over into Livegrade itself. And
just so people are aware that you're doing that in SilverStack, you're recording.
Yeah, I'm currently having to do that in SilverStack. I'm recording files in a log format from Livegrade. So, come on, team viewer is a pain in the ass. So, yeah. So as we're going along here, I've got no video coming in at the moment, but I've got all my slots for all my cameras. I'm recording every single take that comes in. When I pull them up here within the viewer, it's already applying my looks to it, but it's actually recording the file as a log file, which is being seen. What are we at here? Sorry, team viewer is not being my friend right now. So these are all just being recorded as the log files here, which I'm then bringing over into SilverStack, and which is then being updated with the looks, metadata, all of that from the PFLA file that is shared over from Livegrade itself. And then what makes that really nice is that any information that I have put in here comes over my shot descriptions. All that information is brought over and already populated for me. I'm not having to put any of it in, which brings me to an additional feature I'd really like to see implemented over in the Livegrade would be not that I think that dailies operators don't know what they're doing, but a lot of times there's a lot of confusion. So from SilverStack, I'm actually exporting a report based on this information, and I flag whenever a updated CDLA is used, CDL is used. So that ensures that my dailies operator is seeing that, you know, they continue to use the CDLs from these takes until they see a new flag. So it'd be really nice if something of that nature could be implemented within Livegrade that would allow us to create some sort of basic reporting that could be passed along to the dailies operators from SilverStack. I mean, from Livegrade, if we're not using a combination of the two programs.
That should already be possible.
Oh, okay, fantastic. All right. Well, I apologize then.
Yeah, no problem.
I use it in a completely different way than most people, so I just know some people had expressed interest in that. So okay, fantastic.
So if you right click on a folder, there comes a context menu, and there you can select like export report. Like just click on a bin or folder, it doesn't matter. So right click, yeah, and there is export report PDF.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I apologize. All right, fantastic, great. All right.
But we have to admit that it has not the full like capability of the Silverstack reports. It's a fixed set of columns, so you're not that flexible.
No,
as
it's no longer fixed. It will export the columns that are shown in the shot table.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, so this kind of brings us to the next part that we want to talk about, was communicating the intent downstream. Like the reports from Silverstack and Livegrade, focusing on Livegrade, I feel like aren't a full representation of all the column and tabular data that's inside of the Livegrade library. Also, it's missing like CFE can help with this a lot, but also there's other information that can help. If anyone's confused, like the dailies operator, like they can look at our files or our reports and really understand what was going on. Do you guys have any notes about how to like help us communicate downstream better? Patrick and and team.
I'm just thinking which of the topics fit in here. Sorry, I mean we talked about I mean there are different ways of. I mean you're most probably aware of all of them, like providing CDLs and choosing with wildcards from your table what the names of these CDLs are should be, then adding stills as like a visual reference of what that should look like, that CDL for certain scenes, creating reports or CSV files or different things. I think we cover a few of these things, and I hope that the Livegrade Cloud will add to that, because you can also invite other people. So you can, if you have someone who should know what happens on set, you can invite someone to see actually as the stills drop in there. So that's kind of a collaboration thing. But I'm maybe the question goes back. So what are you lacking most, or is it like the comprehensive umbrella that you're missing? Like, well, because Livegrade is not creating a zip file per day,
right?
For example, right? So is that what you're what you're pointing at, or?
Well, I think everyone has their own way of communicating downstream, whether it's the way that they label the CDL and the images, you know what I mean, and like use the reports. But there is possibility, you know, there's always room for improvement. I think Aaron Pico wanted to speak about this. Aaron, you're up.
I just wanted to mention that I use scene take metadata usually to communicate my looks to dailies to post, and I pretty much never use the clip identifier for any reason. It kind of just doesn't fit into my workflow, and I can't, there's no option to have it not appear on the reports. So I have my reports, you know, I have my metadata columns all organized the way I like them, the way I want post to be able to communicate what I want to post per look. And it's like the first thing on the list is a clip identifier that's probably has like the number 35 after it, because it's like the 35th still that I grabbed from that scene, and that's could be really confusing. So is there a reason I can't turn that off, or maybe we just never thought about that?
Vanya, do you want to say something about this?
Now it's good to know that it's confusing to you. Let's say it this way, and we can look into that. I think. I mean, yeah.
Where did you say it shows up in the PDF report?
Yeah, in the PDF report. So like in the Silverstack reports, looks like I mean they're really customizable, and the kind of data you want to show or not show. And the reporting in Livegrade just seems to be kind of like it is what it is.
You should be able, like, the report should show the columns that are also selected, like in the shot library. I think you can't hide the clip identifier, because like we decided to, like, you need at least one column that like shows some kind of name. And I think like when we introduced the clip identifier, we decided that this column that is always there and identifies like the thing that is in this row is the clip identifier. But I think there is not really a reason that it has to be like this. I mean, it was like kind of the idea behind the clip identifier was, okay, this should be like an idea for an ID for the shot. So this was kind of the idea behind it, and that's why it's kind of always in there. But I think we should be able to make it optional.
That's one thing, and the other thing I wanted to show you, but Vanya, correct me if I'm wrong. Can I share my screen? Is in the general press, you have the possibility to change how that clip identifier is assembled. So I'm hoping I'm not telling nonsense now. Please, Simon, Vanya, correct me. So you could also choose that the clip identifier should be created from scene and shot or something like that. So then you actually have meaningful information there. So the next time you create a shot in that scene 4, take 1. Oh, no shot, okay. So you should get a different way of assembling the clip identifier. But I mean, you're probably right, just hiding this thing if you don't need it is the easier solution. Maybe that's something
yeah
to know.
I do use that the custom I do customize the clip identifier mainly just because it's on the slot label, like I'm seeing right there where it says F_608, and that way I can look down and kind of go like, you know, make sure that my global metadata is correct. I'm on the right scene. I'm on the right take. I'm on the right whatever, all that stuff. So yeah, I do that, but I just don't have a need to communicate clip identifier information to a dailies house or to post to editor. I'm sorry guys, I'm just showing you can hear me, right? Yeah. I'm just showing how I for the longest time didn't know why I would use clip identifier, and this is the only way I figured out through a ton of trial and error, is that once I build clip identifier from the slot label, I can then add like a date or name, you know what I mean? So like you see it, but like I couldn't build this out with wildcards effectively enough inside of Livegrade until I basically built clip identifier, and then I could add that as an export wildcard. And then when I export things, I always do JPEGs separately for the images, and then I do another pass where I just do the CDLs separately with no images, so that they're not seeing bad reference images, if that makes sense. And we seem to have a bunch of questions. Aaron, are you good? I'm good. Do you have another question, Aaron? No, sorry, can you hear me? I'm good. Yeah, all good. Chase Abrams, you're up.
Yo, hey guys. So I'm not on my usual Livegrade laptop, or else I'd show you I have an expired license on this computer. But basically, when I was doing this, show and we were doing HDR and SDR, it came through last minute. Obviously, the ideal workflow is to save your SDR corrections in the CFE. But until these post houses and dailies houses and everybody gets on board with that, a lot of people are going to stiff arm you into providing CDLs, regardless of whether you're saving, monitoring corrections for HDR. So I know you guys are working on a way to save CDLs, and Brandon brought that up earlier and all that kind of stuff. But my biggest thing in terms of project organization would be to you, like, I did something where it says day one, you know, it's not automated yet, you know, until you guys update the Livegrade Studio, but I do the exact same folder structure, something very similar. And for the SDR and HDR grades, I would have different folders, and it became kind of a pain in the ass, because you would have scene 10 SDR, scene 10 HDR, and it would just be, I think it's a very simple thing. I don't know if you guys have already implemented it in this update, but like if there was a way to designate SDR grades as well as HDR grades. And, you know, the obvious thing is until these posts, you know, this is temporary until these dailies houses, you know, start getting on board fully with CFE.
Maybe a question about that. Do you have like the HDR and the SDR grades in different slots? I guess so.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% do. Like you know, this was a 1 to 2 camera show, and I had 4 box IOs. So we were firing on all cylinders. So different slots, everything was set up fine. I'm just talking about project organization. It just got a little messy, and it's like not even a huge deal for me. But you know, when you're starting to look at, you know, everything in a line, you know, it would just be nice to, inside the day folder structure, have like an automated system or, you know, a somewhat, you know, a way to designate, oh, well, this is using a CFE engine, or this is an HDR grade. And then for that day, it could be in an HDR folder. You know, the workaround, the obvious workaround would just be to have an SDR folder at the very root and an HDR folder at the very root. But it, you know, different strokes for different folks. You know, it's like
I think what you're talking about, well, is like a library, a shot library like template. So every day I want to make a new day folder or date folder, and inside of that an AM and a PM or a film break folder, and like and these are the bins that I want at the bare minimum. And every day you create a new create a new bin or whatever, it just auto makes the bins and the folders for you.
Correct. Yeah, that would be great. You know, it's and almost like when you guys have your your path wildcards. You know, same thing with the library folder structure. That would be awesome. I think you guys already said that though.
When would you need this, like distinguishing between the SDR and HDR?
It's not even distinguishing. It's just no. Forgive me. It's like
case, for example, on the screen, like this would be a bin for just SDR grades, and then this would be a bin for HDR grades.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. Just an automated way of doing it daily.
Yeah. Just over long projects, it gets kind of tedious, and it's like, why? There should be a simple thing to, here's a new day, make the folder structure for day 1, exactly, and then day 2, day 3, etc.
Oh, and while I'm on the topic, Patrick,
showing these stills.
Probably you can always edit it out. While I'm on the topic, and you know, obviously, if there's no way, some sort of automated way of recognizing once I establish a CDL or press record or whatever I'm doing during the middle of this shot, I am simultaneously capturing SDR information as well as HDR information, whether that's a CFE or a CDL. But every time I press stop record or capture, it will write to whatever folder I'm on. And if you're doing SDR and HDR at the same time, then you're dumping both a CFE and a CDL into the same thing. And then you go back to the manual drag and drop of, oh, I have to put this in, you know, scene 10 for HDR, and I have to put this in scene 10 for SDR. So I don't know if there's a way to designate that, but maybe separating them by file type automatically, or having like a checkbox where you could go, you know, separate by file type, and then it would build your folder structure. So it'd be like day 1, SDR, HDR, anything that's CFE, I want to go into the HDR folder. And then when I just press my button, it will auto populate into whatever folder. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of riffing, but I've been thinking about it for a while, and it would be neat if you guys could somehow implement that.
Jamie, can I quickly share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. I think Chris Bolton has a note on this after you, Patrick. So we'll go to Chris afterwards.
Just a quick note, because I showed that before, is that automatic folder outline. Because I'm taking notes now quite a bit what you are mentioning, like during the last 2 hours, what could be distinguishing aspects, and I feel SDR and HDR is one as well. So as you can choose at which level of the hierarchy which column you want to have. So for example, episode is top, then come the scenes. That's something that you can decide. I could imagine that kind of the output color space, once we capture that properly, it could be part of that automatic outline as well. And then you simply drop everything into your shooting day, because that automatic outline, however you configure it, either the HDR's SDR is below the scene or is on top, and you have two trees, one is for HDR and one is for SDR. However you want to set that up. I would be curious if that helps that, or if you really want to have an automatically created, like, persistent
I think a little bit of both, Patrick, because it's all about being modular and flexible, and we're all staying to standards. But like on one, you know, and it goes back to what Jamie was saying about it being tedious. Like obviously, like, you know, at the end of the day, like these are little things, we work around them quickly, but it just makes anything I could take off my, even if it's little, an extra little workaround or whatever, it gives me more time to go do what I need to do, which, you know, would be FaceTime with the DP or you know, pick apart the image or whatever. But yeah, I mean, some way of automatically, it seems like you guys are you know, saying exactly what we want for the folder structure, but yeah, being able to say file type without having to manually sort through all of them would be great, you know. And it, as I said, it doesn't need to be anything magical, like, oh, it needs to know what scene I'm shooting, scene 10, so it'll go into the 10 folder. But like by file type, that would be great. I'm recording a CFE or I'm saving a CFE, so obviously that'll go into the HDR folder. And being able to automatically sort by file type would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason, if you can take a look at that automatic outline thing for the Livegrade library, that would be great if that helps you. And talking about the file system folders, so that the things end up in the right folders, that's probably a different topic, but please take a look.
I will. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Chris Bolton, go ahead.
Sorry, lost my Zoom conference for a second. I'm just gonna share my desktop there, Jamie, if it's okay. So yeah, just going on the topic of sort of filtering looks and things like that. Everyone's got their own little way of doing things, but I mean, I think everything can kind of be sorted by the metadata fields and or tokens that we already have generated. I mean, this is my workflow, my last movie, where every day I basically had, you know, a part 1, part 2 for my looks. So everything in here, though they have stills associated with it, are actually just being generated, exported as CDL looks. And then I have sort of a separate folder where I can search for all my, you know, scene-based reference grabs. But yeah, it'd be nice to have some way to have some sort of token-based system where you could export. Every day you just have an export function, predefined values, where you could have, you know, whatever your file string name is, and then you can either divvy up by CDLs, grabs, video sequences if you're doing that. I like to include associated LUTs that are being used for the particular day, because sometimes they do change. And then of course, I already use your filtering when it comes to exporting a table.
And so right now you're navigating through these folders like by hand and switching back and forth and building this file system folder structure your own.
Yeah, it's all I mean, I did have a script running for a bit. I just use an automated script to generate just the basic file directories, but I still have to manually populate them. Right, where if there's just a way to use tokens and actually, like, kind of like what you can do in SilverStack, where you know, if it's a new day, it generates a new day folder with a specific text string and then populates the subfolders based on if you're exporting stills, if you're exporting video files, etc. One little side feature note, when taking reference stills, it'd be nice to have an option to mute slots. So if you're not using, let's say, C camera and D camera slot, but you still have them presented in Livegrade, it'd be nice to have a way to mute those. So when you take a global still from all your active devices, it ignores those tracks.
There is something like that in Livegrade Studio. The disarm arm in Livegrade Studio, it has like this functionality that you can, like, as you said, deactivate and activate a slot. We call it arm and disarm. but that currently only works for like recordings.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they record all, but I think we can, like what you said is you also want to have that for like frame grabs from all device slots. I mean, we could just like add code that it also like listens to the disarm arm status, and I think then we have already solved the use case, right?
Yeah, that would be really nice. Because that function is a nice option. The problem is it also takes grabs from slots. You don't want to delete the slots because you want to keep them available or use them for other purposes, but you want to be able to ignore them. Thank you.
And Chris, thanks for showing the folder outlines, because that is really a workflow that we should think about a little bit, how that's best solved. If that's 1,000 times manual folders created, that's something that a computer does quite well, actually. So that should be supportable in a better way than leaving the same folder structure creation up to you as a user, especially if you're doing really that literally thousands of times.
Yeah, and on the comment of having that feature to be who was talking about it? Sorry, I forgot the name. I think Chase was talking about it. Having the option to sort of take your live video feeds from Livegrade, send them over to SilverStack, and populate it so you can be able to do look comparisons. I mean, it might just be feasible to have it where you have a watch folder where a portion of SilverStack is always looking for your sort of on-set proxy video files that it can pull from, so you don't have to send them over. You can just have them always populated into SilverStack if it's in the same computer, and then just filter over looks as they're being generated from Livegrade, instead of actually taking that function, drop it into Livegrade, just have it point over to SilverStack.
I definitely want that feature in Livegrade though.
But if you have SilverStack going, it's already there. You just need some pointing directories.
Right. Hey, Patrick, I was just going to point one thing out, and then we'll get to another question. You might have already touched on it with the search, but I'm just going to share my screen real quick, because maybe this is already fixed, and this would be great. But if you have a project, just hide this. Oh, shit. If you have a project, right, so you have a whole bunch of days, and you try to type in like scene 23, right? Like you'll pick up based off of the scene 23, but if I'm not, say I'm on like another day and I want to find scene 23, it doesn't come up, right? So the workaround is then to put all your days within like a root folder, and then scene 23 will bring up, but then it also starts bringing up 123, you know what I mean? And then other things that don't match it at all. So I'm hoping with like the new feature or the new sorting of what you're demoing will kind of fix that issue.
Yeah, I take a note. It's somehow related, but not directly like solved with so we're aware of that nasty topic that you cannot search the entire thing if you're not creating your own root folder. That's a little bit like it's not hard to create your own root folder, but I mean, why should you find out that you need to do your own root folder for the entire project if there is internally actually one already there that you simply cannot select? So that's
that's the funny thing. There already exists one, but you don't see it, so we could show it maybe.
But in the smart groups, I thought we want to implement that, right, Simon?
Yeah,
there you can switch to the home.
Yeah, there you could switch to like scene 23 if you want to.
No, I thought we talked about also to the home.
The home directory folder.
Yeah, right. Home folder.
I think when you guys start to make the cloud integral into the Livegrade, one thing that has to be simplified is that like when say I want to give access to the cloud to like the script supervisor, right, or visual effects people, like they don't want to see the Livegrade like UI. They just want to have like a search bar like on their phone or their computer, and it says, what are you looking for? You know, the simplest way, and you type in scene 23, or I want to see all shots with a 50mm lens, or you know what I mean? And then and then it will show you all the clips or stills that match that criteria. And so I think the layout of Livegrade only applies, like the visual UI only applies to us, but anyone who's not familiar with it would be like, why do I want to search with bins and drop downs? I just want to type in what I'm looking for and find it as fast as possible. And I think if you guys think about that kind of stuff, that will make the cloud really, really useful for other departments, not just DIT.
So would the smart folders like in SilverStack solve this problem? You know them? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it would, but again, it's the interface. Like if you're on your phone and you're a visual effects supervisor,
sure,
and you want to access like the data that I've been collecting, like you don't want to navigate the Livegrade user interface. You know what I mean? Like you just want to have like a search bar and maybe have drop downs. Like exactly, it should be as simple as possible so people use it. Moving on, Timur, you're up.
Hi. So on the topic of metadata, I was going to say that the way I use it with Red cameras is I connect all of them to my router. And then in Livegrade, that allows me to see all the metadata, all my slots, even if my screens have clear overlays. And also that allows me to load my CDLs directly into the camera. It's a Command R or something like that, or Command G, which basically eliminates completely the whole CDL exporting thing. They get the raw files and they export those, and those already have mine look baked into it. Well, when it comes to working with ARRI cameras, it forces me to go into cap mode, which I don't want because I cannot use my false color on my monitor. So it'd be good to view the metadata from the camera just by connecting to it without going away from the CDL node, and also be able to upload my look, maybe with going into cap or not, and still use my false color. Yes, and on the topic that Jamie just mentioned, also it'd be cool for VFX or script supervisor maybe to, through the cloud, to mark certain shots that they need, that they would like to use or save for me to export them later. Something like that would be awesome as well. Thanks.
Chandler, you're next.
All right, two small things I just wanted to add in regards to a recording video within Livegrade. One is the "you've run out of space" dialog pops up when you're in the middle of a recording, and then I can't record the rest of that take. I'd love if I could set maybe some sort of like at 100 gigs it warns me, or at 50 gigs it warns me, or something like that, to where I can actually clear up some space on my drive and I don't lose the clip I'm trying to record in the middle of it because I've now all of a sudden run out of disk space and I wasn't aware of it. Not a huge deal, but there have been times where we'll be recording something and then I lose it. By the time I delete it, the shot's done, and then they're like, okay, we're moving on to the next setup, and now I don't have any reference of that shot. So it would just be nice if there was some way to set some sort of warning that, I've reached a certain threshold and then I should probably start clearing up space at this point. And then the other thing was that, where is it? Oh, I spoke to Simon about this, I think about 6, maybe 9 months ago. I forget exactly when it was. But as mentioned before, a lot of times we get stuck with ACs who have really old Teradecks or whatever other video transmitters. And a lot of the older devices will, when they lose video signal, will switch from, say, 1080p to 720p or something of that nature. That stops the recording. It'd be really awesome if there was an option, like a check mark or something like that, that would allow us just to continue to record black. Because a lot of times, within 10 to 15 seconds, I've got the video image back up. And now instead of just having one long continuous file, it's now broken up, and I'm having to subset this as -1 or whatever, sort of thing. It'd just be fantastic if I could just continue recording until I chose to actually stop the clip. So, all right, thank you.
I wanted to add one thing to Timur. I think just to understand that right, I'm just sharing my screen for just a second. Because you mentioned the possibility to upload to the Red cameras. in the that's the connection dialog for ARRI cameras. You can add an ARRI camera and use it as manual grading, and then you also get that that upload button. It says here you can upload the current look at the camera by pressing the upload. So it's not an interactive grading, but it's the same behavior as the DXL or the RED cameras. Are you aware of that, or did I miss the point here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm aware of that. I'm just saying that in order to do that, I need to be in the cap mode, which blocks my false color option. Yeah.
What does it block?
Which by the ARRI color workflow, it's still the same CDL as far as I'm concerned. So
it deactivates the
but
false
what
color.
bothers me is that I cannot use my false color on my laptop.
That's the problem. I'm not sure why that's the case. I have to look into it, why it's the case, and whether we can like fix that.
Yeah, that's really that's why I brought it up again, because it felt like something's not as intended. Maybe we can take a note and almost consider it as a support case to answer that properly. So I just wanted to follow that up because that got a little bit lost before.
Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Chris Bolton, you're up.
One thing I forgot just to ask when we were talking about video routing, just for your future note, if it's possible to have a way to be able to save and define how you have all your metadata shortcuts rules set up, so you could potentially move it to a different computer if it was a problem. That's all. Thank you.
Patrick, does that make sense?
Yeah, this is a known thing, like exporting the keyboard shortcuts, because you can spend quite a lot of time and then like printing them out or making screenshot of the thing. This is a weird thing. So yeah, we discussed that I think several times already and didn't find the quick and easy solution how to solve that, but that's something I would like to bring up again. I mean, it ties into that topic that we had before, like exchanging the wildcard settings and column settings and all these things. So I see that we have these features for customizing Livegrade, and then you customize Livegrade, and then you move to another computer, and then you're like, okay, and now I'm back to zero again, and that's a half an hour of spending time just to get the right column setups, and that feels. I totally understand. So just to say that.
Awesome. All right, moving on to Aaron Pico.
Hey there. So just to speak to the kind of section in our outline about trust and verify. I know I've had it a couple of times in my career. I'm sure everybody else has either heard it or had it, when the DP comes to them and says, hey, all those looks we set for yesterday's stuff, I watched the dailies, and it doesn't really look like what we had going on set. You check and you see that you sent everything the right way, but maybe somebody at the post house was needing a cup of coffee, or didn't implement your looks or instructions quite the right way. Is there any kind of what would a good method for having completing the cycle with post to verify that they're seeing what you're seeing? Like, let's say they're in another state, another country, whatever. You can't go and set up their monitors or set your system up next to theirs. Are you guys working on anything in that regard?
Yeah, to be honest, that's something that we missed somehow, that there is a huge need for that loop back that you said, to closing the circle. So I think you could try to work your way around and try to get TIFF stills from the dailies and import them into Livegrade as stills again, and do one side-by-side comparison or something. But it feels like this is not explicitly modeled, or we didn't think of it really as a use case yet, and that just started with the other video and your session like a week before or two, and the conversation with Jamie during the last days, that this is an open, like a little bit of this is left to you right now, and it could be better supported. For what came to my mind is, for example, we have an internal tool that lets you that allows you, because we have these questions sometimes also in support that people find they hand over like either ACES or a CDL and a lot, and it doesn't match exactly, and then we try to find out, is it visually the same? So is it like the correct ranges and everything, but it's just in the scopes there is a little bit of a difference that might come from the kernel implementation versus LOTBox implementation. You can't get it exactly the same, but is it visually the same, or is there really a problem somewhere? And we have some tools, for example, delta E based image comparison thing that tells you, can you see the difference, or is it just in the, really, is it one or two code values in some of the colors, and you actually just see the scopes jumping, but you can't see a difference. And so maybe that would be something that we could think about expose. So, but this is really just the start of the thoughts about this, because as I mentioned, this has, somehow we missed that this closing the cycling is really a task that could be supported by Livegrade. So thanks for bringing that up.
That would be huge.
Yeah, in the current version of Livegrade, there is an import movie functionality where you can like import like a movie file. It only supports ProRes and H.264, so it's like very limited, but at least like that can be a way to like get like a daily file into Livegrade, and then you can use it as a reference. But that's like, actually it was more like a functionality for us, because we don't want to capture something. If you want to debug stuff, it has to do with movie files. So it's not like future complete, I would say, but it's at least like a way how you would get like a dailies file into Livegrade, at least a little bit.
If you compared H.264 to like a TIFF, it would have horrible compression as well, so it wouldn't be a great indicator. But Chase Abrams brought up a good thing, like in Resolve, when you do a conform, you can do a difference mode. So you have like the raw files and then the the reference movie that editorial sends, and if the image is black, that means everything is matching 100%. But as you start to see an image, that means something's wrong, whether it's the size, the framing, the rotation, or even color or exposure. And something like that might be huge for Livegrade. And if you don't mind, I'll just share my screen real quick, and I'll get to you, Jasper. When I bring in references from, like on a project, I make another bin, like a dailies reference. And inside of that, I bring in these references that are pulled out of Express Dailies. And I really wish they had the scene and take information, but that's another part. And then I have to bring these images into the library slot, send them out over SDI, and then I can do a wipe with my image to confirm that this is actually working. And the funny thing is, I was doing a full range workflow on my last project, which I wasn't all that used to, had been a long time. And this is where we discovered the bug within Livegrade, that it wasn't showing full range stills properly over SDI. And you guys gave me an updated version, and then everything started to match after that. So just to illustrate the point, like I think what we hear from Netflix a lot is that people just kind of cross their fingers and send off CDLs, and sometimes without reference images, which is embarrassing. And they just hope that the CDLs look good in dailies. But I think unless you get stills out of dailies and bring them back into your workflow and compare them, you're just hoping that everything's right. And so if Livegrade can make a difference mode or another way to make that a lot more streamlined, it would be amazing. It'd be super huge.
At least the difference mode, I think, should be easy, because that's just like another reference mode, like the overlay mode. We could just integrate like a difference mode. I think that's easy. Like importing all the dailies is a little bit more difficult, but let's see.
Awesome. Jasper, you're up.
Yeah, just wanted to mention what as far as closing that loop, I unless I'm stymied by their own internal security protocols, I'll usually ask to get whatever it is that that the files are that they're uploading to PIX or DAX or whichever frame IO, whatever they're using for their dailies. Those come back to me on an encrypted drive so that I've got those available as soon as the uploads happen the following day. Those get filled back in both on Resolve, and now that Livegrade has it working, I pull them in as videos into Livegrade, build a new folder in our new bin inside the day folder for the previous day, load all of those dailies up into there, and then inside reference the library slot, you can reference back and forth all of the stills that you've pulled and any videos that you've done. You can just sort of pull stops and have a look and see that you've got everything up and running, as long as you're getting that sort of a file back. So yeah, I'm really happy that the import video part is working now in Livegrade, because it gives me an easy way for me to show the dailies, whatever the director of photography didn't watch the day before, I can throw it up onto the Flanders and show them a good view of it, and the quality is assured.
Awesome. That's so important. A couple sessions ago, someone mentioned that they were having trouble getting permission to get stills or video back from the dailies session, and I think everyone needs to just push for that. I mean, even if they'll only give you the first week of shooting, just to confirm that the workflow is working is incredibly important, and your reputation stands on that. And I think if people don't push to get the stills or get video or some way to know that dailies is looking 100% correct, you're gambling the entire shoot, and it's just not worth it.
On a lot of shows, I could just sort of push it through, and that's that makes it. But I had a big problem on a Hulu show where I know two other people working on Hulu productions who are getting their uploaded PIX files back as files every day, and I couldn't somehow get the same people to agree on the same idea of bringing it back. And I'll sit there and talk with the exec. It's like, I could just generate all this stuff. I have all of this. This isn't a security risk. This is a matter of, me just doing my job and making sure that the stuff looks right.
Exactly. And if a production is giving you, an issue about security, like Jasper said, an encrypted drive with stills or video, and if they want to sit over your shoulder and watch that you're just bringing the footage back in and comparing it to make sure everything's good, like, just tell them they can watch over your shoulder. Just make sure it happens. That's the important thing that we're trying to drive home, is trust but verify. Like, you have to verify, and we're trying to make sure Pomfort supports us in this. Maybe makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
I have a question on this. So how would that matching work? Would you go through if you get back some reference footage from the dailies, would you go through a lot of different shots, or would you just open up the first 3 ones, and if they look exactly like your reference stills, you're good with that? So how far would you do the comparison?
I personally would start with what I know to be challenging shots, like a day exterior where the person, like an actor, might be backlit, and just make sure the skies aren't blowing out, and then like a nighttime interior shot or nighttime exterior. And then once you know that the challenging shots are met, you can kind of start moving on to just the regular shots, But as long as we can kind of queue up a couple shots, I just move through them pretty fast and see if anything's standing out. Jasper, do you want to talk about that?
Basically the same way. I mean, I'll take whatever seemed difficult, or if I have a large correction on something that's fairly far away from where the LUT basically lands it to, I will obviously have a good look at those to make sure that those are coming up onto people's iPads and Blackberries the way that we had kind of hoped that this was going to happen. But yeah, a lot of times I'll spot check 4 or 5, make sure that I'm not in deep trouble, and then at my leisure, I'll have a look at other stuff later.
Second question on that. Thank you for clarifying that. Second question would be, is there a challenge of finding the right image or frame to compare, or is that relatively easy? I mean, because you might only have stills and then you get the dailies, so you're scrubbing through that to compare. Is that a challenge that you feel needs to be supported better in Livegrade, or where do you feel is the nasty part, where you feel you're not well supported in doing the reference comparison when something comes back from dailies?
It's actually not very difficult. The only take that they care about is the last take. So you queue up to the last stills that you've taken, find the appropriate still and the appropriate take that you've got, and scrub to where you think it is. You just a little bit of back and forth, and you'll find the exact frame.
Okay. So
yeah, Patrick, hopefully when they send you stills, they have the scene and take information. Unfortunately, the stills I showed you in my demo didn't have the scene and take, but it was easy enough to go by day and just see exactly where the still was and find a close enough image on my end. But if that could be made easier, more streamlined, yeah, of course, we'll take it. We want to make the verification process as easy as possible, so that people who are just getting started with Livegrade, which we always kind of forget about those people, they can have the confidence that the show that they're on is working properly. You know what I mean? You don't want to leave the beginners behind.
Yeah, because it feels like it's. I mean, we mentioned the difference mode that might help, or a delta E comparison mode, or something that you have some more information about how different these images are now, really. But beyond that, I would say maybe it's really more a matter of documenting that properly, because if it's just 5 shots that you're probably actually browsing through, it's not something that we can help a lot by automating. If you would go run through hundreds of shots and try to compare them, then it would be worth considering, like finding the right stills with the right shots and doing that automatically. But if it's really just a handful, I think that might be okay, that it's a fairly manual process. But still, how you import that, how you compare, how you make sure that not the file formats come into your way and weird gamma differences or something that are actually part of the encoding or whatever. Maybe that's more part than of documenting that use case for us. But it's, as mentioned before, this is a new use case for us, and that's something that we will think about, how to better like be aware of it and make users aware of that this is possible and necessary, as Jamie says.
Yeah, copy that. Chris Bolton.
I was just going to say a way, maybe just have an elegant way to compare a reference still to what you've created, just using the waveform. That way, at least you can check levels that way. One thing I was going to ask, I haven't actually done this, but currently, if you do an HDR workflow and you generate a reference still, does that flag with the appropriate flags for the color space and HDR being used?
No, that's what I mentioned before. As soon as we add that that flag, that the software knows what that node, that look node thingy actually ends up in, what is the output color space. As soon as you can choose that, or we defer that automatically from, for example, ACES output transforms, then we should be able to tag them. Do you know that there is there already PQ tags for TIFF that you could set? Or how would that work, that you like double click on a TIFF and it, so what monitor would that be? Or is there anything like that already? I know there is something in MP4 files when you like attach them to an LG TV or something, they then switch the TV to PQ mode. But do you know how that would work in still? So who would watch them in HDR?
Yeah, I mean, I've only done it through Scratch, and Scratch gives you the opportunity to force what your flagging is going to be on the output, but also on the import. But I don't know strictly how that works when the actual file, how it's tagged.
Okay, we need to take a look then. How, I mean, HDR stills is really a thing that I'm not really sure how they are viewed then, and
yeah,
if the viewer is then aware of if he has or she has an HDR monitor really, and if it really switched to these super bright values. What I found, maybe talking about HDR, what we found quite interesting is the way Apple implemented HDR on their displays. So what they call the reference white and what goes beyond. So I find that kind of neatly done, and also these different modes. They have a reference mode where they fix really to PQ and the nit levels are fixed, but then they have adaptive modes where you can still have a brightness slider. So for example, a brightness slider, if you imagine, is really something that should not work if you're outputting to PQ, because you have code levels that have a fixed nit level. And so if you have a brightness level slider or control, you're changing that actually. And so this is kind of solved quite neatly, I think. And it also works well on mobile devices like iPads with good displays, the same way on the HDR monitors on desktop. So it's the same thinking that they put behind it. So I think displaying HDR images on devices will be a topic more and more now, and we will try to follow these tagging topics here and what is becoming best practice here, because it's actually not really happening still. So how should you, which application will go to HDR if you double click a TIFF that's tagged with PQ? I think that's not clear to me still, at least.
You'd have to bring that still into Livegrade and look at it over SDI. There's no other way that you'd be able to see something even close. Hey, just to that note though, real quick, Patrick, if we were working in CFE and we sent off, say, CFE in our reference images to post, and then Daily sends us back a CFE, right? It might not have any adjustments, but it can literally tell us, you know, with the frame grabs that they're pulling from the footage, if their project is set up the same way that ours was. And maybe Livegrade can read, you know, I guess the header ID of the JSON file, and be like, oh, you know, they were set up full to legal and you guys were legal, and it would be immediate, like, hey, their system's not set up properly. You know what I mean? It would almost be like a, what is their viewing environment and processing environment set up as, and make sure it's compatible with how your Livegrade is set up.
But that would be another thing that you would need to request from the Dailies operator, right? That you get their CFE files that they have been created, they've been using.
I just requested it from Colorfront right now.
Okay.
I mean, that could be a really great way to see how they're set up. You know, we'll see it in the file and they go, oh, there's the issue right there. You're not set up properly, and here's why.
Maybe I can throw in just what Simon mentioned and at the beginning of the session, that with ACES 1.2, which has been released just a few days ago, there is this new format called AMF. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That's the ACES metadata file. It was previously called ACES clip, which was, well, and still the intention is to carry the pipeline information in a metadata file, so that you have what is the input transform, what are the output transforms, what are the CDL values in between, is there an LMT applied. This was a missing thing from the very beginning, because we struggled with comparing Resolve's or Colorfront's ACES pipeline with our ACES pipeline, because you could have set up things differently. And so this solves it. So just wanted to mention that AMF we implemented AMF export in Livegrade already. So we're just waiting for the last finishing tests so that we can release ACES 1.2 support in Livegrade, and with that comes AMF export, and we will then see how much that picks up, and how other vendors will import AMF and also then export AMF again. And we will consider then how much AMF will play a role then also between Livegrade and Silverstack, but that's not figured out. I just wanted to mention that pretty soon, really within more days almost, Livegrade will be able to export AMF files, which is kind of a little bit less powerful CFE file, just so that you know.
Awesome, good to know. Jasper, you're up.
Yeah, just one thing that I forgot to ask when I was talking earlier about the import for video files into Livegrade. It'd be really nice to be able to import multiple files at once, because doing this individually one by one is a bit of a pain in the butt.
It's noted. Thank you, Jasper. We're aware of that.
Aaron Pico, you're up next.
Hey, to the whole Pomfort team, I just want to say thanks a lot for taking the time and doing this. Really, really cool. A lot of great information, good back and forth, tons of great questions. And I might have to hop off soon. So I just wanted to say, what is the best method for going forward if one of us has an idea or a feature request or something that's not necessarily causing a problem, and they're not like running into a snag, but like, hey, I had an idea, why not try this? Is the best way to contact you just going through the contact support in the menu, or is there somebody that would like to be emailed or communicated to?
We're gonna post Patrick's personal address and phone number in a second here. Hold on.
That'll work. Thanks.
Vanya, do you want to like talk 2 sentences about how this usually works and how we get feature requests from support and how?
No, like you mentioned, I think the best way is to write a message to the support on the website, and then we have a workflow how we handle this, and all our feature requests get collected, and we read through them, and we nothing gets lost, and yeah. We evaluate them regularly, and we will decide on how to prioritize them, also depending on the effort, of course. Yeah? So I think this is the best way. You mentioned that.
Yeah, maybe put in the subject line a feature request so that Xuan, who handles all the support, knows, okay, this is not a problem, this is a feature request, and then it's a little bit easier for him to sort all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So Joanne is the one who will be on the first level, and then if he can't answer your question, I'm the second level, and then it goes to the developer, to Simon for Livegrade, but all the feature requests are collected by Joanne, but we review them and evaluate them regularly each week.
Okay, great, cool.
I just want to mention that even if you get, the answer might feel a little bit like a standard answer, like we forwarded this to the product management team and you will know when this is to be considered or something. It's like the standard answer that Juan pastes in, but it really happens. So there is a process of collecting all these things. We have a database of all these feature requests. We go through them regularly. So it's really, you know that they are taken care of well, even if it's a feature request and you don't get a reply immediately.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Chase Abrams.
Hey guys, since we're just kind of on the hopefully Q&A and dreaming side of this conversation, I wanted to ask, a lot of this like live streaming stuff is coming up. And, for the past, year and a half, 2 years, I've been loving the AJA IO 4K, and obviously there are other boxes that do the same thing. But recording video inside of Livegrade, a cube, there are several other things that do this. Is it possible to add in the options recording an H.264, or does that require different graphics cards and different boxes? I'm just trying to think of a way that we could keep it all under one roof, which is impossible with our job, but at least, lesser softwares. And I could be recording these H.264s and sticking them in a folder that would somehow, with a cellular hotspot, I could handle it on the backside or whatever we can, but like some record an H.264 that we can upload or live stream on the day. And that way we can avoid buying things like a cube, and then spending all this extra stuff on whatever else. But it would just be nice if we could keep it all under one roof. I don't know if that's possible, but just dreaming.
Yeah, so an answer for me. So first a question, do you want to record ProRes and H.264 at the same time, or only either ProRes or H.264?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because, obviously for us that record log, we want as much color information as possible so that we could go back and regrade. I'm looking for any best suggestions here, how to do this, but yeah, I would love to have my cake and eat it too, be able to have fidelity and be able to look back at a recording and record it, but then also have an H.264 because I have a feeling in today's day and age, we're going to be dealing with this a lot more, you know, trying to get a live stream off the set.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a problem is the amount of CPU resources you have available because you have to do it live. So you then have to encode H.264 and ProRes at the same time, and you may not drop any frames. So you have to make sure that there is enough CPU resources, which could become difficult if you do both.
Well, you just tell us
yeah.
what we need to buy and we'll buy it. You know, if you guys implement it, you know, if it takes 20 graphics cards, that's what it takes. But
the problem is it's the CPU. You can't do encoding on the graphics card. Well, you can do it on some, but not on all. Yeah, I mean, for like just recording H.264, so H.264 only, I think that would be easy to implement. You just have to set a flag, and then it's done. Doing both ProRes and H.264 at the same time is a little bit more difficult. I mean,
like I know you say it's CPU intensive, but say I were to get separate boxes, right? And these AJIO 4Ks have graphics cards built in. So it's like if I had two of these, one for an H.264 and one for this, you know, it would just be a nice way to, like the way I look at it is the more I could keep it in my rack and with software and all that kind of stuff, the less things I have to tweak, you know, adding something like a cube, while easy, you know, well, now I'm setting it up on the cart, or I'm setting it up on, you know, externally on a C-stand with a hotspot, and, you know, and putting that 20 feet near set so that it upload, you know, or whatever. But I'm just trying to simplify, trying to look for ways for it to be simpler, less equipment.
Yeah, understood.
Maybe a question in the group here. How many of you would be interested in H.264 files of like with the look applied that are then handed out? Because that feels like a different thing than just keeping the log ProRes recordings for you on your card. But these H.264 seem to like then be on iPads or handed out, or so who would be interested in that, or who would use it like that?
Shouldn't it be H.265
or H.265? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know, like in at least in Los Angeles, we have an issue with playback, right? So if you're recording these files, it's a union jurisdiction thing. If you're recording these files as we do, and they're files that people can then like log onto a server with their iPad and then play back themselves, I don't think there's actually jurisdiction over that. And that only counts for Los Angeles County. So as soon as you leave Los Angeles, it's really not a problem at all.
Okay.
But I guess if somebody is queuing up the playback and playing back the files, that's when it's an issue. Like we can't be doing that. But again, if the files just exist on like the DIT server and people connect to it and play back whatever they want, I think that is actually allowed.
Okay. Yeah, because we've been like thinking about that a little bit of of maybe even just putting a transcoder into Livegrade that when CPU is idle, just start transcoding the ProRes files and put the look of that actual shot on it, and just create the H.264s, and even embed a burn-in or something with timecode and scene names or something, and so that you're much more prepared to hand them out. We call them, in comparison to the dailies that are created from the source footage, we call them immediates. I don't know if there is a proper name for that, or you call them streaming, or is there a name for that? Like just from the on-the-fly recorded stuff that you hand out things from that?
Not really, yeah. I mean, we just call it probably proxies, but another thing to remember, sure, that kind of feature would be great, but also there's a lot of us, including myself, that are trying to build the leanest Livegrade setup so that we can work anywhere, like in the woods, you know, like, so this kind of additional features would be great. I'm sure people would use them for sure. But also maintaining that, like using Livegrade in a small footprint is also important. Chandler Tucker wanted to speak about this immediately, and I'll get back to the list of questions.
Yeah, so I actually kind of do this to a little bit of a degree with the workflow that I use. Since I'm using Silverstack alongside of Livegrade, I'm taking those log files that I've recorded, and then I can create proxies or files to upload for whoever needs to see them out of Silverstack. So as you mentioned, Patrick, if you are thinking about maybe bringing that render engine over into Livegrade, to where we don't necessarily have to do it live in the moment, but between takes or just whenever there's some downtime, if we could set it to where it all of a sudden kicks in and starts taking those log files and creating, H.265s off of the looks that we've created, something like that would be absolutely fantastic for sure.
Awesome. Chris Bolton, you're next.
Hello again, it's me again. Couple questions. One was for the ProRes and H.264, H.265 decoding. I know some manufacturers are starting to leverage Metal, Apple Metal. Are you guys starting to use that at all?
The answer is yes. With the HDR stuff, we will have to use Metal, because like the HDR stuff is only supported in Metal and not really in OpenGL. So I think when we release the HDR version, we will switch at least part of Livegrade completely to Metal, and I hope that in the future we will like migrate Livegrade completely over to Metal. I think that's the way to go, because Apple says OpenGL, we are not going to improve that any further. So I think we don't have any choice here. Like Apple forces us to use Metal in the future. So
yeah,
I think we are going the way.
I've seen some demos of it, and it's I gotta say it's pretty impressive. The resource handling is really, really good. And then I'm sure you already have on your roadmap sort of between Livegrade and Silverstack Lab and your cloud bases. I'm sure Pomfort's looking at a online dailies review type platform, but what about, in speaking to sort of the COVID situation, would there be some ability to have a sort of cloud-based live preview that's like you could have producers sign into it so that they could keep an eye on set versus having to use, external tear deck hardware, etc.?
Maybe can you elaborate on this a little bit more? How much or what kind of information and what kind of live stream, or what would the producer need or want to see? Do you want to create that or edit that or enable certain things, or is it just all the slots, just stream 5 streams to somewhere else on the internet to watch on an iPad?
Just purely, so you have a capture card hooked into your Livegrade session, is just have the 4 streams go live to a secure service, so you can have producers, etc., watch somewhere. That's managed through Livegrade, but it's literally just live, and it doesn't record anywhere. It's just being a live stream.
Yeah, that I can't say much about this because it's just vague ideas that we have about this. That ties a little bit into the question that we had before with the H.264, H.265 encoder. If that's like put in directly, it's like very close to not just write it to a file, but put it on the network connection. If the transcoder is more a postponed thing that's not live, then this is a little bit more different. Then again, maybe to find the right priority for this, do you feel that this happens, or that could be a slow start out of this situation, that more people are watching remote, like streams from within
Absolutely.
the camera department, and how does that relate to video assist responsibilities?
I don't know about the 600 jurisdiction, but I mean, up here in Canada, if it's just a live stream, it's not really a problem. If we were controlling recording and playing back, then yeah, there'd be a jurisdiction issue there.
And to the question before, so you feel that more people are watching from remotely, do you see that as a valid like way of starting film productions in that situation with less people on a set, or what would be the motivation to do that?
Well, definitely for the next 18 months at least, for sure, it's going to be something that a lot of productions are going to be looking at. I'm just throwing this idea out there just in case you guys have some unique tools in your basket that you could easily implement something like this. I mean, I've been doing my own research on my own, and there's definitely some caveats and some issues to implementing it well, but it's just a brainstorm thing for you guys to think about. It's just because of the current situation that we're in, and it's a worldwide thing. So it might be something that could lead into a tool set that maybe you're already considering.
Just one more question about this. What would be the quality requirements for that? Because that's always like an issue with how high the compression is, or how strong and how bad the image then actually is that's on that iPad or on that computer. Yeah, so for like a higher quality type stream, I think most productions would just rent and hire a proper MPEG TS type stream, something with a high bit rate. But what I'm talking about is kind of a Zoom style chat type resolution where most producers don't need super high quality. They just want to see what's going on set and what the pacing of things are. That's sort of what more of I'm leveraging to. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Zach Martinsky. Don't forget to mute yourself.
Hey, buddy. Question for you. So, or actually more request, just with all the things that everyone's kind of asked or requested today, I just can always use more videos, whether it be YouTube, whether it be the Pomfort channel, just saying, here's the new features, here's how to implement them, here's how to link them to SilverStack, just as much content as you can produce, especially because of COVID now, and since we're all at home anyway, and if you needed assistance with that as well. Thanks.
Keemer, you're up.
Yeah, I was gonna add to Chris's point about streaming, because right now, strangely enough, in Russia, we do have shoots going on, really low key, really minimal crews, but I just got a call about a shoot this week where the director's in Germany, the DP is in England, and they're always looking for solutions to start streaming stuff and upload 264 files on some sort of cloud service situation. So they look to the camera and immediately view the playback. And yeah, and I think that's going to be really important because here we have a really limited amount of crew members on set right now. It's like 10 people limited max. That's it.
Hey Patrick, it's Brandon from Colorfront. Look into the SRT protocol. It's what live broadcast uses. So if you don't want to dig down too many tunnels, SRT is what broadcast live guys use. It's secure. It can be encrypted. All those fun jazz things that everybody knows and loves. But it's something you can look into. And if you have any questions, we've been working on the SRT stuff, so you can always reach out to us and the devs on the Colorfront side. We can help point you in a direction if you need help in any way.
Is that something easy for DITs to implement without your broadcast truck?
Yeah, you can do it over a hotspot.
Nice.
It's doable. It's just it's just dependent on how much bandwidth and et cetera you have. You can actually modify the signal based on your throughput, what you need. And it supports H.264, H.265. It's a whole bunch of different. It's a the SRT is a protocol package, and you can kind of shove whatever you want inside of it. So, but it's a relatively lightweight, easier thing to set up in general.
Okay, thanks, Brendan.
Chandler Tucker.
Awesome.
Hey guys, I apologize if this is already a feature within Studio. I don't have Studio, so I can't speak to it. But it was mentioned earlier that you could actually disable certain slots so that you're only recording the slots that are actually rolling. Is there any plans to, or is there currently a way to where when we change the video routing, so say for example, I want to send a camera out throughout set, that it can also at the same time disable B and C cameras that I'm only recording on A, or let's say, for example, I send only B and C camera out. Is there any way that we can have a couple of these things kind of work together to where when certain video routing options are chosen, it also makes some choices with our slots and things of that nature?
Yeah, the automator, I think, inside Livegrade does that.
But it doesn't within regular Livegrade. That's what I'm speaking to. Does Studio do that? I don't have Studio, so I'm not sure.
So currently that's not possible, but
okay,
I think maybe we can add it to our feature list.
Okay, fantastic. And then real quick, I don't see him in the meeting anymore, but Matt Richards brought up earlier in the chat if there would maybe a possibility to view multiple scopes. So if you select 2 slots, maybe you could see side-by-side scopes for people that don't have multiple waveform monitors or something of that nature to do some comparisons when they're live grading.
Yeah, possible is everything. It's just a question of the work. I think it's a good idea to have that. I just can't promise when it will be done or something, because that will be also quite a little bit of work, because currently like all the code is set up to only show one image. So we would have to work on that. So it will take its time, but I think it's a good idea to have that.
Sure, completely understandable. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and just on the note of streaming, Danny, do you want to talk about the other solutions for streaming?
Yeah, just to touch upon SRT, which I brought up our chat earlier in the week, and just mentioned it as well. It's a very efficient protocol. It can go way beyond traditional. You get 10-bit if you wanted to. If you've got the bandwidth to go up to 70 megabits on 265, you can do that. But yeah, it's been implemented within the UK through Sky, and they're using it as a test product more so than anything else, but it's been pushed more so on the basis of them putting a greater emphasis on UHD and HDR. So it's something for which has been pushed within Europe, at least. I mentioned the Matrox box, which I've been using for maybe about the last 18 months. That supports the protocol, but it depends on what server you want to be able to use. So say, for example, if you want to integrate anything that goes in within an API that may be talking to another feature set for what you in terms of hardware or later on, or cross-integrated within many other systems, including something like this, Zoom, or there's so many APIs out there, and I'm always surprised as to how much is actually out there in terms of overall support. But it has been made very easy in terms of getting these things integrated, but a little bit of homework is required in terms of how you can integrate all these systems. But there are many system solutions out there that are pre-existing and ties in with Microsoft Azure, which is very comprehensive. Loads of free tutorials available on the Microsoft website about that. But these are just some of the many options out there for what you can actually do to implement. So it requires a little bit of investigation in terms of what your overall end solutions would be in terms of desire for and the art.
I think we lost them. Is there anybody else that wants to talk about any feature requests or anything else that's completely related to Livegrade that we weren't covering? If not, we'll start to wrap this up, and unless Patrick and the team, you guys want to show us anything else or talk about anything else?
No, I think from our side, we mentioned a few things that we wanted to show, and not all of them could be shown today, but they can be tested out in the next week. So we hope if you're receiving our newsletter or visiting the website or our social media channels, you will find that there will be like things to try and test, partly with the cloud, partly with the other features that we mentioned. So there is like things coming up. Would be happy to see you then in that group if you're interested to give us feedback on that.
Sure. I think you have a bunch of people that are willing to beta test right now. Michelle Delorme, you're up.
Hey there. I'm sorry if this has already been asked, but is there a way to do an opacity slider on imported on LUTs in the chain in Livegrade?
We have an amount slider in the new version in 5.2. In the upcoming beta version, we have an amount slider for some grading nodes. So is it that what you're looking for, or is it especially for LUTs, or?
It's particularly for LUTs. That way, if we're quickly grabbing a LUT from a different project that maybe was done with a different camera, the amount relative to whichever log space it was created in would need to be adjusted. So say I want to import a LUT that was designed for log C, but now I'm using a Sony log camera. I might want to increase or decrease the opacity of the LUT, including like way down to 10% to add it to another LUT.
Yeah, that's we were thinking about this if we need this functionality for LUTs as well. So now we have the answer. Thank you.
Actually, on that point, if I can interject for a second, I mean, there's other tools out there that do it, but conceivably it would be interesting to have something that can, if you have a look that you know is based on one camera, if you can have it translate to work with another camera. I mean, there's obviously workflows that would make more sense to do this, but might be an interesting tool set.
Like you can accomplish it with the color space transform tool inside Resolve, and then using like dissolving your key output.
Yeah, or
getting
lattice
it there,
or whatever.
Yeah, and then just spitting out a cube.
For me, I'm thinking of it specifically, like if I want to do, say, 3 LUT nodes in Livegrade, and the first one I'm doing like 10% of a film look, and I want to add it to 90% a 709 tone curve. So I'm not concatenating the contrast, or I'm adjusting on the fly how much of each LUT I'm using.
It's an interesting approach actually, because you could argue that adding 80% of an S-Log3 LUT to a log C image doesn't make the image like technically right or so. but I understand this like the urge of mixing 3D LUTs, for example. That's why we took a look at the ColorFront user interface before, where they have this blend slider where you can blend between 2 looks, and that would be a direction that we would consider. For example, if you have the standard log C curve, for example, from ARRI, and then you have a very heavy look also based on log C, and you have a blend slider that goes between the like default thing and the heavy creative look, and you feel like the sweet spot is somewhere in between. The look itself, the LUT that has been made by a colorist, might be too much and you want to just have half of it, but in comparison to a neutral other LUT. But so that would be
for
something
me.
that
The blend is less interesting than actually being able to control the amount on a per LUT node. It's much more flexible to keep it on a per LUT node than a blend.
Okay, maybe, I mean, we Simon is also smiling. So we had this slider for the LUT already planned, or I think even implemented, and we decided, well, I'm not so sure if we introduce a lot of problems if you can do just half of log C, what comes out then? But if there's actual like need or requests for that, why not adding it in? I mean, applying just half of a LUT or half the strength of a LUT is I mean, I could understand how it should be implemented, what should be done. So it's definitely something that we could consider, because we're adding that amount slider anyways for other, like for the CDLs for example.
Yeah,
That would be
just a quick question to Simon. Would that be an additional effort to implement that for 3D LUTs as well, or for LUTs?
I mean, the amount slider, no, not that much, because like we already have like the code for the opacity. It's more like kind of a question, does it make sense what we are doing? As like Patrick already mentioned, I mean, what's the opacity of a LUT, right? What does that actually do? Like the current code that I have, like it interpolates between a LUT that does nothing and the LUT that is there. But I'm not sure if it makes sense from like a color science perspective, because I'm just basically, if you move red by this amount and then you make it 50%, then you only move, the LUT will only move it by this. So it's kind of a question of, does this make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
But thanks for the comment. I mean, we consider it, even if it's an experimental like amount thingy that you need to enable somehow, because we don't want to show everybody who's opening Livegrade for the first time that you can also do a half log C to video conversion. That would be misleading somehow, but in certain cases it might be interesting to do that.
Anyways, I just want to say thank you very much, everybody. This was amazing. I hope that you guys are doing okay out in Germany and it's not too late, and thank you for all your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. We know it's late. So is there anything else Team Pomfort wants to ask before we let you guys go?
Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah.
Stay safe, everyone.
There's been a request to do this like every 6 months.
Okay.
But only the meeting, please, not the reason for the meeting.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thanks
you too
for having us.
Have a great day.
So, bye.
Okay, bye.